Welcome, everybody, to the continuation of the best of 2024. This time around, I'm going to do something a little bit different because I was really inspired by a wonderful book put together by the Folio Society, and it was the Patton Oswalt and Jordan Bloom book. And I'll explain what that is here in a minute. Before I do, though, I want to let my co-host introduce himself in case no one knows who he is, just in case. But I'm pretty sure most of you, all of you, know who it is. Go ahead.
Well, I'm so happy to be here for this special end of year segment. My name is Crisis with a K. My home on the internet is crushingcrisis.com, where for over 14 years now, I have been creating guides to all of the Marvel Universe, which are now all totally updated through the present, as well as DC and Indie. I talk about new releases. I talk about all sorts of things. It's a blog, but you can think of it more like a wiki of how do I find that comic book that I wanted to read. And, X-Men was the reason I started the site because I thought it was crazy that there was no site that just said, if you want all of Uncanny X-Men, buy these books. So we are really on my home turf today talking about favorite X-Men comic books. I don't often do exclusive X-Men content anymore, but when Omar calls, I answer the bat phone.
Yeah, I remember I reached out to Peter because I was like, hey, I know we're not doing an evergreen stream in December, but I'd like to do one more video to kind of send off 2024 and do a live video and get people involved and talk about X-Men, because I haven't had a chance to talk to Peter about just X-Men in a while. I think the last time we did was we reviewed the X-Men 97 animated series, which he got out from under his shell to come and do with me. So that was really nice. But I didn't really tell him exactly what be doing. You
didn't.
I put it nicely. I said, hey, what are your top 10 X-Men comics, X-Men related comics of all time? And he's like, oh, what are we doing? And I'm like, well, I think we should do a video on like the top 10 best X-Men comics, our top 10, right?
Our personal, the things that resonate deep down in our soul, made us laugh, cry, cheer out loud. And it was hard doing the list to not just pick the 10 comics everyone should read. Like, we've all read those lists and made those lists. I made one for my Krakoa guide to say, like, here are the 20 issues you have to read to understand Krakoa. It's really hard to like shake yourself out of that mindset and like, no, just pick the stuff that you like.
Yo, yes. It is like, it's not for new readers. It's not for like the best story there is or what I think people would enjoy. It is our own personal choices. But the tough part is, if we were to curate our own choices, how do you do this as a duo? How do you put only 10 books in if you're coming in with 10 different choices? So we'll have a total of 20 books, I think. I don't know. I haven't completely looked at the list. I glanced at Peter's horrible list of choices.
That's okay. I started the trash talk before.
You did. I saw that.
So I got in the first punch before the whistle was even blown.
And you got in the punch in the chat. I wasn't even part of the chat. I was busy trying to build the stream. So it's going to be fun and difficult to try to put our top 10. And I don't know if it's going to be like, oh, you get 5, I get 5, Peter. But I think it's going to be a discussion, and then having you wonderful people involved, and again, this is our favorites, not necessarily the best of or greatest jumping on points, which I see that a lot. We've done kind of things like that and like best events. So will there be a street?
Well, I think about that too is like, and I'm sure this is true for you, Omar, and probably for a lot of people in the chat, I can just go on autopilot and almost do places to start in my sleep. I'm like, well, you read X-Men 1 and then you read Giant Size X-Men and then you read 137 and then you like, it's just become so acknowledged because we've got 60 plus years of X-Men now that it's really easy to kind of go into autopilot. And I found it was really challenging to like, and I know I said this already, but I can't emphasize enough to really like put that aside. Like, do I have to pick Giant Size X-Men? Is Giant Size X-Men one of my 10 favorite X-Men issues of all time,
Right. We're not going for historical significance. We're not going, it is what appealed to us and why, I think, is the whole background to this idea. So I couldn't have picked a better person. But yes, who is more wrong, Omar or Peter, with their choices? Because no matter what, everybody has their own personal opinions, right? Somebody could have been reading X-Men for 60 years and been like, you guys are wrong. Or somebody that just started reading X-Men is like, holy crap, I just started reading X-Men last month and these guys are wrong. Whatever it is, it's all personal opinion. And okay, we want a fair fight. Put the gloves on and come out. But, well, you thought this was going to be a street fight. Homer Street always wins.
So what is this book? You have this book. I don't have it physically here in New Zealand. This beautiful curated book that kind of inspired us to do this.
Yeah, let me go and grab it. I'm gonna highlight you for a second. Let me grab it really quick.
Okay. Hi. I have control all by myself. How we doing, folks? I've got some recent X-Men books out here, but then I pulled out an oldie. When are they going to reprint this, y'all? Flying Covenant. It's funny, you know, I feel like we have a circle where we read old X-Men stories and we liked them back in the day, and then we think, oh, they weren't that great. But then I read this again recently. It really, really stands up. It's like a really fun, good, well-coordinated crossover. And I love that we're in that like nostalgia renaissance. Woo! That's not good. We're in that nostalgia renaissance era now where we're going back and reevaluating stuff from the 90s and early 2000s. And we're like, actually, that was a lot of fun. Chuck Austin will have his day. We're going to give him a nostalgia renaissance soon. We all get that Chuck Austin omnibus. We're all going to remember that it was actually a lot of fun.
I give it in the next 5 years, we'll get a Chuck Austin omnibus, and I'm going to be raving about, you know, I was wrong. Chuck Austin was way ahead of his time. The devil should have been Nightcrawler's dad. And other stories. So this is the Folio Society book.
It's gorgeous.
It comes in a beautiful slipcase.
Highlight yourself so we can really get on it nice and close, dude.
Here, I've done an overview on the channel. It was really cool. It was a cool project. It's the Unforgettable. Is that mirrored? I can't tell if I'm mirrored or not.
No, I think you're fine.
Okay. All right. Unforgettable Stories. It's curated by Patton Oswalt and Jordan Bloom. And if you look at the thumbnail, built by Dom of X, by the way, who's only 12 subscribers away from 2,500 before the end of the year. So 12 of you, just go and subscribe to my buddy Dom of X. Put the thumbnail and the slideshow together. He made our thumbnail look like that. Curated by Peter and Omar. And then, of course, the internal artwork here. And what it is, it's scans of their favorite 10 Marvel comics. And it's really cool to see like the behind the scenes, because not only did they pick it, but at the very beginning, there is a wonderful introduction. And along with the introduction is the why it was chosen. Because I was scratching my head at a couple of these going, really, Captain America? That's a weird Acts of Vengeance story. Oh, I forgot I get Peter back in here. There we go. You know, it's things like that, or like the last part. But at the end of the day, it is their favorite stories, and they explain why. And I thought that was so cool. So I'm gonna have fun doing this with Peter. So yes, Dom of X. Let's see here.
And the thing I really thought was cool about it too is we're so in the mindset of fight, which we'll do. Don't get worried. But I like the idea that, you know, Omar's one of my best friends, one of my best comic friends, to be certain. And like, this is about sharing why we're so obsessed with these issues and kind of like hashing out a version of the 10 X-Men stories. It's not the best or not essential, but like fully represents how much and why we love X-Men, and we always come back to X-Men. So that's really cool. And like my list with Omar will be different than like Omar's list with Lars or my list with Oddfell. And it's like you could almost combine all sorts of people and then get these unique versions. It's like, you know, some kind of like Pokemon evolution of like what's the specific Omar and Peter version of the comics that really are essential to us and make us fall in love all over again.
So that's what we're here to do today. And if you look at the thumbnail that Dom put together, it's very much built on what this looks like. Very cool. Very cool. This is a really good question. Do you prefer scans like this or the Masterworks reworked art? I think I would have preferred the scans here if they had printed them in like matte paper stock instead of this thick glossy paper. You almost lose a little bit of that realism when it comes like to having these kind of scans and printing them in like this thick glossy paper stock. I think matte paper would have worked. And then when you got to, of course, the more recent stuff, this could have worked on something like glossy paper stock. That's about the only thing. So, I mean, I don't think there would have been a problem with switching paper stock in the middle because, I mean, this is the way, the colors and everything and the little artifacts in there, almost like the hairs you can see. This is the way I remember it, but definitely not the paper stock that it came in. So the Masterworks honestly have spoiled me rotten. I don't know how anybody else feels about what to expect from older material, but yeah. Now, are we ready? Are we ready, Peter? I sent you.
I have it in. I put it in order of release date, so it'll be like couple you, couple me. It kind of depends on how old our picks
Excellent,
are.
excellent. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me share my screen, and we can have some fun. And this is so awesome. I've always wanted to know Omar and Peter's favorites. You may be disappointed.
Omar would not let me have 12. I said, Omar, can't we just do 12? Why does it have to be 10? So I had to cut 2 of my favorite comic books all time off of it because I just couldn't.
Yeah, man.
Well, I'll mention them when we get there, but they did not.
It'd be really fun to do this with different people too. Like, I'd love to see somebody that comes in from like the when Marvel Rivals has just been out for like 6 months and they've been reading like 6 months worth of comics. What kind of thoughts they have. All right. So Peter has put this in chronological release date. So the very first book you're going to see here is going to be our oldest book. So if you're looking for something older, this list may not impress you like at all. And I'm sorry. Would love an Avengers. Oh my gosh.
That would be a lot
I have
of fun.
so many thoughts. I have so many ideas.
It would be so hard to not just pick like whole swaths of Roger Stern.
Nothing but the bomber leather jacket years. Yeah, all right. Here we go. I love that stuff, man. All right. And kicking it off. Actually, let me remove the watermark that I've got here really quick. So you can see it fully.
So everybody in the chat, you've got to start thinking about what your top 10 is. So when we ask you at the end, and if you all start talking about an issue that for some reason we forgot and we decide you were right, there's no rules. We could decide that you shifted our hearts and minds and we put that in. So please, as we go through the years, as you feel like we're skipping some of your favorites, you should chime in with what they are too.
Absolutely. All right. Oh, yes, I would have the cross. 100% I would have the crossing. I think I'm so weak for that era. All right. This is mine.
The oldest book on the list.
Absolutely. Oldest book on the list. This is Chris Claremont, John Byrne, Terry Austin, Glenn Oliver doing the coloring. And thank you, Dom, for putting all the stuff. This is a classic cover. It has been homaged so many times. The reason that I put it on this list, I will never forget the feeling of this is really happening. So I read this my 3rd year reading. It must have been my 4th year. I was in the United States, and I remember getting that. There was a trade paperback version of this, an old school trade paperback when they didn't really release a lot. And I thought, oh my gosh, they're killing the X-Men left and right. Like, this is crazy. I thought, how are they going to do this? And then, of course, they have the whole time travel. By the way, there might be some spoilers in case you haven't read something. So if you see an issue, you're like, oh, I haven't read it yet. Hit that mute button really quick until we get to the next one. But yeah, absolutely, man. Issue 141. And it's also, one of Byrne's last issues on the book because he left with 143. This one brings back a lot of memories. That trade paperback fell apart. It's long gone. And I have the original issue signed by Byrne and Claremont. It's one of the few issues I have signed by both of them. And maybe one day Terry Austin. But yeah, love it. So it's a classic, man. I think a lot of people would probably put this one. I don't know if you have any like feelings or nostalgia for it, Peter, or when you first read it.
Sure. Well, I want to talk about a few things that you kind of made me think of. First of all, that there's nothing older. We'll come back to that. Before we go to the next slide, we'll talk about some things older than this that we thought about picking. I think part of what you said that really gets me about this one is it is just smash cut into Kitty first page. This is New York, the Big Apple. Once upon a time, it was a nice place to live. It is no longer. X-Men hadn't really done anything like this before. The beginning really of time shenanigans in X-Men. So it was like really disorienting to read. And even when I was first reading, and Omar and I are about the same age, this was already a key. Like you already had to have at least a nice crisp $20 bill if you were at a convention, if you wanted this issue. So it was actually a long time before I read this original storyline, because I put my money on the Phoenix Saga. You know, like if you were a teenager or a kid and you had $20, you had to pick, and I picked 137 instead of this. And so it was years before I got to read this. And the other thing is, I think people sometimes get so weird about like, oh, you pick something from the end of so-and-so's run, end of Claremont, end of Byrne, end of any author. But sometimes, and it's cool to start at the end sometimes, because they're like at the peak of their powers. It's like when they're telling the story they always wanted to tell, when they're in the groove as much. So I find it actually really fun sometimes to recommend something towards the end of a creator run instead of from the beginning of a creator run. And I think this is Claremont and Byrne at the peak of their collaborative powers on X-Men, much more so than anything you could pick from the 100s or 120s.
So I came really close because I was like you know, I'm like, okay, favorites, but I mean, they have to mean something. I remember getting my copy of Giant Size when I was in I was in my late teens. I was hustling to try to get a copy of Giant Size. I found a really good deal, and a friend of mine is the one that sold it to me. So that means something to me, but I think over the years, favorites are so different, like, and have become, no matter how many different versions, even if they ever come out with like a gallery edition of this one, I'll definitely pick it up just because it just means so much to me. But that's what I'm starting. I don't know if you have another one, but I'm going to move on to the next slide.
Well, let's just talk about, so you said almost choosing Giant Size. Clearly, I almost chose 137 because it's just such a complete story. People talked about the Dark Phoenix Saga, but it's really mostly in 137. It makes me cry to this day, but I feel like that's an X-Men comic that at this point everybody has been exposed to. It's, you know, it's like the favorite color that everybody has. It's the car that everybody drives. I don't know if I need to put it on my top 10 favorites anymore. What I almost chose, where's my Dazzler book, is I almost chose Dazzler's first appearance in 130, which actually just has a lot of good stuff. It has a lot of early Kitty stuff. It has a lot of like Storm, Jean, White Queen. But again, it just didn't feel like it was complete on its own. So you almost chose Giant Size. I almost chose 130 or 137, but they were late cuts for me.
137 would have been a good choice. I'm surprised you didn't do any of the Dark Phoenix Saga, considering your love of that title so much, or the omnibus.
You'll see. I got Jean in some other places.
Okay.
I think you also have the next one before mine start.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. Wow. Yep. God Loves Man Kills. This is among my favorite. It's probably my favorite comic of all time. It's my favorite X-Men comic. It's the epitome of what every X-Men comic should strive to be. I know it's older, you know, and I've seen comments whenever I do overviews of this stuff that it might be outdated, but I think the message is very important. And there's a lot of messages in this one, you know, about repeating the sins of our past, or how words have more power than we think. And I think there's so many lessons in this book, or acceptance for those that look different. I think this is everything. This was great. The original idea was to have Neil Adams draw it. So if you get like one of the big editions, like the gallery edition, I think even the Omnibus Volume 3 has the extras in the back where you have a few of the pages by Neil Adams, but Brett Anderson stepped in to actually do it. It's wonderful. It's great. Ooh. And it will also fatten up our book because this is a big oversized book.
You know, I mean, if you've never seen it in person, for fans now that just are buying an omnibus or buying in or reading on Marvel Unlimited, these Marvel graphic novels were big. They were, I mean, I don't know if they were officially treasury size. I don't know what the official size was, but they didn't fit in standard comic backs and boards. The original
like a magazine
graphic novel. Yeah, magazine size. So it was weird because if you bought one back in the day, like it didn't fit into your comic box. You had no book like bag or board to put in. And I remember my New Mutants special edition just like sitting on top of my long box because I just had nowhere I could put it, and I didn't want to put it alongside and have all the books butt up against it. I think with this one, for me, it was of questionable canonicity for so many years because it didn't really get referenced, and it was like, is this kind of just a off to the side.
Have you not read
book.
God Loves Man Kills 2?
Well, then during the Extreme X-Men era, and then also in the way that it's been collected, it's been found a place for. Part of it is actually very problematic to fit it in exactly, because it happens, I think, like right when they come back from the Brood stuff in 166, and like Kitty's got to be there, but it's but Rogue's not there, so it's like really a tight squeeze to get it in to continuity. And I think for years I kind of was like, oh, it's just this sideline story. And now I think people have a different relationship to it than I had like in the early 90s, where it didn't feel like it was totally official.
How dare you, Max? How dare you? It's so in there.
It's very canon.
I think it was one of the hardest parts about there are two books that I think of when I think of people working in the collected editions department that must have been a nightmare to map, and arguments started over. And one of them is Uncanny X-Men Annual 10 and God Loves Man Kills, because it's like, where do you put it? And I'm sure, people were like, how about we put it here before From the Ashes? But does it really fit right before From the Ashes? Because look at Sprite's outfit. So I know I would have had a blast just talking to people about where to put it, but I think they've done a phenomenal job in the epics and the omnibus format about where to read this book, or where it's suggested to read this book. This was one of the books that convinced me not to get into X-Men. You would have saved a lot of money, yeah. So if you don't like reading,
I have a second house.
Or
first house.
I would have had 2 dream cards by now.
Yeah.
There it is, X-Men versus Obnoxia the Clown. We will see. I think the next one is yours, my friend. I think.
Me. Just a couple months later.
What do you got? Oh,
so
go on.
I love Rogue. I really tried to do my full fantasy Rogue hair today. This issue is one of the first keys that I ever bought, and it was so surprising, because if you're reading X-Men in the 90s, it didn't really reference that Rogue was a bad guy. Like, you knew that she was involved with Mystique, and you knew she had drained Carol Danvers, but you didn't really get that she was like the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. They'd kind of tucked that plot point away a little bit. So to read this and see the level of animosity that all the X-Men have to her, and that it's not just on the cover, and then Carol Danvers shows up and like totally gives her an uppercut and sends her through the roof of the house. It was really, really shocking to read as a little kid, because there was no hint in the current okay, sugar part of X-Men that this was real. And Walt, this is, I think, the first Walt Simonson art on an X-Men issue, and his style is really tight and clean here. Paul Smith is the next few issues after this, and it alternates really well, but there's just something so beautiful about Simon's line work here. So I really like it. I think I like joining issues. I would often recommend this as like, oh, this is an issue to read as you're getting to read X-Men, but it also is really special and important to me, just because Rogue is important to me, Carol Danvers is important to me, and I think this is much in the way God Loves Man Kills shows the X-Men and how X-Men is about acceptance. I think this shows that sometimes X-Men is about found family and forgiveness, and I think that is a story that is through the line throughout. I almost picked 150. I love that confrontation with Magneto, which I think is a really important Kitty issue. That was on my list probably until I got down to 15. And I almost picked Avengers Annual 10, because that's Rogue's first appearance and it's great, but it's like Michael Golden art. And then I almost picked 175 because it's beautiful. Paul Smith, wedding of Cyclops and Madeline Pryor. But for me, in this early 80s, this is the issue.
So I love the fact that you went From the Ashes and you picked the one issue that Paul Smith did not draw.
Yeah, I know.
But honestly, I love what you said about this, because I mean, that's what X-Men is, right? Like Wolverine is a nice reminder of that Chuck was able to forgive him, and they have to remind him of that, because him and Carol were really good friends, and what she did with Carol was messed up. So this is really funny. I did not. Here it is. Trouble is, you need to read the ROM issue where Rogue loses her ego before this issue. You didn't realize how important that was until you're rereading. I haven't read ROM in 30 something years. And when I read that, what's in volume 3, I think, or 2, when that evil mutated creature, the kid, absorbs the evil out of Rogue. Woo! I was like, wait. I kind of put 2 and 2 together then, and I was like, this is going to be in From the Ashes. That's why she's good. That's weird. I mean, do you need to read it? Probably not, but yeah.
But it's beneficial, and for Mystique's story too. Honestly,
Hybrid. Thank you, Hybrid.
I incorporated them into our X-Men Read in the House with Kid Crisis, and I had never read them before, but I was like, oh, Mystique and Rogue are in it, maybe we'll read it. And I was like, damn, this is really, really important. This is huge, huge character motivation for the two of them. And it's tucked away in ROM. So I'm really excited to finally get ROM Epic Collections and to have it on the shelf because I don't have any singles of ROM.
Unless you're Mr. Sinister, then all the X-Heroes are such mixtures of light and dark and go through multiple. Jacob, I think Pete mentioned you in the chat, but I have not seen a Gambit omnibus for the announcements, but they're reshuffling things, so hopefully we'll have some.
And if he gets out there and makes a name for himself, who knows? I mean, he's pretty big after that movie. Oh, man, so.
This is Omar. When do we get the issues focusing on the grumpy Canadian stabby man? Hey, we'll get there, okay? Wolverine didn't have a series. He had a limited series. Actually, he had a limited series that led into these issues right here. And did not make it on the list, apparently.
Neither of us picked it.
I came close because, man, that Frank Miller art was killer back then. Rogue is my favorite X-Men. It's going to be hard to say no to this one, but we'll see. What is next? This is you.
Also me.
New Mutants. 21.
This is a perfect issue. This is a perfect comic book. It's perfect. It's perfect because it's one of the downtime comics, right? It's not a baseball game, but it's a slumber party. It's perfect because the New Mutants finally have gelled at this point. The first 12 or 13 issues are kind of a rough read. Then it starts to get to like, hey, Nicholas, it gets to all hits at this point. Sienkiewicz is just, this is the beginning of Sienkiewicz just going off. Like he realizes that he can push it so far on New Mutants with Claremont. It's a big oversized issue. It introduces Warlock, and I like older issues that are embedded in the pop culture of the time. In the background of the bedrooms of the slumber party has posters of all the musicians that were big in 1984. They talk about having a crush on either Michael Jackson or Freddie Mercury, both amusing in their own ways. It's just such an artifact of its time. It's so beautiful, and it really is got some heartfelt moments in it too. To me, this is the signature New Mutants issue, especially because Ileana is with them at this point. So it's really got that full classic cast that has Ileana and Danny on it. I think if you want a New Mutants issue, this is the issue.
This was my first issue of New Mutants, so this one holds a special
place.
And I bought it because the kids had been appearing and these back issues I was getting, and I'm like, well, who are these? And what the hell is that thing on the corner box? I will say so far, out of all the books we've gone through so far on our list, I think this is the one that will be most dated because all the girls are crushing on Tom Selleck.
Oh, Tom Selleck.
They're doing
Tom Selleck never gets old. That's not dated. We can crush on Tom Selleck right now. How dare you?
Years ago. Hey, I like Magnum PI. They're dancing to Michael Jackson, and there's another pop reference in there too that I'm like, man, I wonder if kids would have to Google this later. But anyway,
this ain't for the children, Omar. This is about our culture. This is about what we grew up with.
I know. I'm just saying.
Tom Selleck is still hot in our world.
You're right. Absolutely. I take it back. Tom Selleck equals a young Omni Dog. Oh my God, now I can never unsee that. Surprise Marvel team up. Annual 1 not included in the X-Men Omnibus. Oh, not included on this list, but the answer. You don't even know who Tom Selleck is, Josh. X-Men 1991, The Wedding of Gene Scott, 38, Gambit for Sabres. Oh, these are yours. When the Dream
Those
Dies.
are good ones. You're going to see one of those. Spoilers.
Morning Crisis, like animal spirits. Who are your mutant spirits? I mean, I like to believe Wolverine, but I'm probably going to end up with somebody like Gold Balls or something stupid because it's just life.
I think mine is Hellion. When I first read Hellion, I'm like, I've never imprinted on an X-Men character as hard. I know some people get really identified with characters. I don't really, other than hair. But Hellion, he's just, he kind of wants to be a good guy and nobody will give him the chance. And he's like, what if I'm just an asshole instead? And I really, a part of me like really identifies with that as somebody who's always eager to be included in things and spend a lot of my time in my life kind of on the outside looking in, which I think is why a lot of us like X-Men to begin with. And there's always that temptation of like, what if I'm just mean? What if then? And so I think I really just love Hellion. And plus, then he's a little bit nicer than Quentin Quire. Like you got to have contrast.
Yeah.
Quentin, so Hellion's just extreme. Like, yeah, it's kind of flipped now, but.
Yeah, I've always liked I like to think Wolverine, but I'm probably more like what's his name, Mondo. just kind of laid back and chill. Like, well, I don't want to spoil what happens in Gen X, but
what about so wait, well, let's pick one for each other, because if I picked one for you,
if I were to pick one for you,
I feel like I would pick
Dazzler.
Well,
I don't think I've ever seen anybody get so ready before a show.
From my gut, I would pick Forge for you.
Oh, I love that guy, the maker. Genesis.
You just have a way of like making it, put it together, make it happen. I see a solution. Like I actually kind of sometimes think of you when I think as like a voice for Forge, because I always read them in head with voices.
I like that. He's like the MacGyver of the X-Men, so I'll take that.
Yeah.
And he looks really good in those little shorts from the 80s.
Oh, I love those slutty shorts on Forge.
All right. Okay. What is next?
This is me.
Wait, this isn't me. This is you. Good choice.
This is and keep in mind, we just skipped over like Life Death. 182.
201 came close for me. I don't
201 know was in my top 20. I love 182 when Rogue has like the breakdown and she can't keep the Carol personality separate from the Rogue personality.
That's so good
when I read that. This is my favorite issue of X-Men. Like, this is the one that I will die on the hill that we've got to put in the book. It's Alan Davis art. Every single page is iconic. It's Psylocke coming into the team proper after having been in the annuals. I wish we had put the first page in here, which is the tight full page splash on Psylocke's face. And it starts a lot of plots. This is the first Sabretooth Wolverine fight. At that time, canonically, we've inserted more in the past, and Claremont always intended them to be connected. So it's like first Psylocke, Wolverine and Sabretooth, Psylocke versus Sabretooth. And I know I kind of picked another joining issue, but to me, I like this for reasons other than it's a joining issue. If I could have one page of original X-Men art, it would probably be the first page of this issue.
Man, so you picking this one, I went through, and because I didn't have 213, I'll be honest with you, even though I love that cover. So much so that I subconsciously made it the cover of Mutant Massacre when I did that reveal, and David was like, that was the cover we sent you, and I was like, oh, it wasn't. He's like, but I kind of like that one more. Let's just keep that. But I did have 205 and I had 133. The Wounded Dog story and then the first Wolverine solo. But the more I thought about it, I was like, okay, it's not a Wolverine list. Otherwise, those two would definitely be there. It's more like what X-Men means to me. And man, a 205 almost. I think 205 was like number 12.
Barry Windsor Smith.
Oh my gosh, yeah, the colors, the art, the story. And that actually made it on this list here. That actually is in this book, 205. It's that good. It's a good standalone.
I'm always surprised that this is not on that level, and I guess because Barry Windsor Smith's art on superhero books was much rarer than Alan Davis, who had that whole run in Excalibur. And you'll see I'm obsessed with Alan Davis, but I don't know. To me, this is just so significant. I guess it's kind of become a key because it's like a Psylocke joining issue and it's like Sabretooth and X-Men. But I don't know. This issue to me, I always elevate this so much higher than I feel like other people do. And so I'm always happy when I find people like you. I know in the chat, Hank was saying this was their first X-Men book ever. To me, this just occupies like God tier X-Men.
Oh, I mean, this is the Mutant Massacre. This is like, this picture alone just symbolizes what X-Men was to me back then. Look at all that rage, man. I love it. I'm sure if there was none of this right here, the Comics Code Authority, we would have seen some blood on that cover. And it would so glorious. So glorious. It's funny because I saw that you put on the chat, I promise there's tons newer stuff too. It's not awkward. It's hard. He wrote 17 years of X-Men. And how could you not put his stuff on? It's like, it's like talking about, it's like talking about Berserk and not mentioning Kentaro Miura after Berserk has gone on for 30 more years or so. This is also you, Alan Davis.
I know.
You love Excalibur that much. Show me what's going on here.
So, okay, first of all, my actual pick in my heart was almost Excalibur 61, which is half a silent issue. It's all splash pages of Rachel fighting Galactus. And it's
Oh
probably
yeah.
my second favorite X-Men comic of all time after 213. And if I would pay any amount of money, I mean, I would sell guitars, I would pay anything to have one of the pages from that issue. But it's not a great story. And so even though I love it for the art, I was trying to think of things that apply holistically. This is the introduction of this team as a unit. It really kind of gives you a sense of time and place and who these characters are. Kitty and Nightcrawler sort of lost from the X-Men. Rachel being abused by Mojo and breaking free of that after having been gone for several years of story time. Captain Britain and Megan sort of in a relationship that has love, but also a little bit of disgust between them, even at this early point in their relationship, and how these 5 unlikely people come together and form this team. And also it's Alan Davis art, and it's a full story all in one, and it's beautiful, and it's genuinely funny, which I don't think a lot of X-Men comics are in single issue installments. But even from the beginning here, there's just a certain like silliness and lightheartedness to Excalibur. And Excalibur to me is really where Kurt became a character, and Kitty too. Kitty, Claremont had put in a lot of heavy lifting in the 180s and 190s, and when she appears in New Mutants, I don't know that Claremont ever perfectly nailed down Nightcrawler until he got Nightcrawler to Excalibur. So I think this is beautiful. It's weird. It's something that people who are only X-Men movie fans maybe don't even know exist, but they're going to find familiar characters in it. And I think it's just, top tier comic making.
I love the colors in this one shot. I remember, I think Glynis Oliver was trying out different things for this one shot, so it looks different than like the monthly issues Glynis was actually coloring. I love this team. I love Rachel. I love Kitty, and this is of course in the aftermath of the Mutant Massacre.
Yeah,
and it's like, what, we're never gonna see these characters again, and then you find out about this direct market only comic that existed back then, and you're like, I don't have a comic book store near me. Oh, thank God for subscriptions. Yeah. So yeah, I forgot that Terry Cavana was a editor at the time, because I always think of him as the writer. Not a lot of people do, on like Iron Man and the Avengers when the Crossing was happening. So yeah, Alan Davis wrote Excalibur.
I fully agree.
I said what okay, we're not here for that, John. We're here to talk about how horrible the character Iron Man is. No, I'm just kidding. We're not. God loves Iron Man. Okay, so bold choice, my friend. Bold choice. But I like it. Just like this one. Wolverine 34.
I can't believe. Well, say your thing.
To this day, best standalone Wolverine comic. I love this comic. Everything I love about Wolverine, probably the origins come, like, it's from this comic. It's Larry Hama, it's Mark Silvestri, it's Dan Green. Once again, Glynis Oliver, who's coloring just about everything at Marvel. It's a story about, hunting this creature, the Hunter in the Darkness, and a group of hitchhikers get killed, and what ends up happening is that Wolverine's like, wait a second, it's not that creature. We got a serial killer on the loose. So it becomes like a murder mystery, like he's helping them out. Meanwhile, this old forest ranger's like, this guy looks familiar. And then at the very end, as the old forest ranger's about to die, he says Logan, and he has a flashback of like the war.
Yes.
And Logan's like, how'd he know my name? And that's where the comic ends. And it's so good because this is long before we had anything like, how old is Wolverine? This is long before we had the shitty ass House of M, like, I remember everything, and it didn't take us anywhere. And Wolverine Origins, like with Forever Logan, none of this James Howlett nonsense, by the way. We had this, like, little bit of glimpses of what perhaps Wolverine could have been in the past. Oh man. Yeah, to me, comics, like this is comics. This is storytelling. Single issue, standalone issue. Love it, man. Now, what were you gonna say, Peter?
I was just gonna say I love this choice because to me, I mean, I looked at Wolverine because I really do love this Larry Hama era, and this is not one of my highly rated issues in this era. I was like, okay, fine.
Yeah, nobody talks about this issue, by the way.
Yeah,
nobody.
But then when I saw it on the list, and you emphasized it when you spoke about it, it's personal. Like, that's the point of this list. To you, when you think of one Wolverine story, you think of this story. And I think that really is the nature of why we're trying to get away from picking must reads, which hopefully will start to deviate from a little bit as the list goes on, because it's like something you love. And it's really hard for me to argue against, like, well, this is the quintessential Wolverine story to you, which is kind of how I am about 213, where I'm like, this is like the quintessential X-Men fight issue.
But I think most people would agree with you, though, with that rage of, I mean, look at this. Warren is making this funny statement, but I mean, oh, it's a wolf on the cover. I thought it was a tree. But you know what I'm saying? Like, when people think of Wolverine savagery, like, they're not looking at this. They're looking at 213 going, that's Wolverine. But for me, it's about what's on the inside, right? And this is the Marc Silvestri I love. Like, Marc Silvestri now, it has perfected his art style almost too much. And I still love him. He's still my favorite artist. But back then, it was all sketchiness. You weren't sure where the tree began and the hunter in the darkness ended. Like, it's just things like that. Josh, but this is our picks. You don't have to disagree. 36 was good. I'm not going to lie. I like Ernest Hemingway. But this is the one.
So
Birthday issue did not make it.
Yeah.
Birthday issue didn't make it. That would have been issue 10.
Yeah.
With creepy ass Sabretooth. Man. But Peter, I never think of Of course he doesn't. I'm with Omar on this one. The ending made my jaw drop as a teen. Yeah. I was like, how old is this guy? We didn't know. We didn't know back then. Like, that was the beauty of comics. Now you got the internet. Now you've got, like, how many more issues of Wolverine and X-Men? Like, back then we were just like, they didn't want to tell you. He remained a man of mystery. Anyway, I've gone on about this one for too long. Wow. It's going to be hard to curate this, my friend. There's another one of mine. Oh, man.
Right in the middle of a crossover, too. Very bold choice.
Right, bold choice, right? But it's not about what the best entry point is. It's not about what the best one is. Because if I had to pick from this era, 268, right? 268 is the one you go with. It's Black Widow. It's Captain America. It's Wolverine. It's a flashback story. It's a story about, modern time and how they know each other. But I went with feelings, and nothing made me have a bigger smile on my face than the big, like, fight here of Psylocke just becoming like this badass character, because she was still new. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but this is the world we live in now. Quanon Psylocke is who I'm talking about now. Back in my day, we only had one Psylocke, and she was just Psylocke Betsy Braddock. But now it's Quanon, now it's Betsy. But back before the retcon, but also the reunion of the team. Everybody thought these X-Men were dead. Havoc was dead. Colossus was dead. Like, everybody thought these X-Men were gone. And this is the big reunion. This is also when Storm becomes an adult again, right? From hanging out with Gambit. And this is the badass scene where Gambit, you're like, man, I thought this dude was a douchebag, but he's actually pretty cool, man. And you get that wonderful, probably one of the best, well-choreographed fights in a comic book I've seen, with a dude with metallic wings and a guy with adamantium claws. That Wolverine and Archangel fight, woo, brutal. Plus, you get to see all the craziness that is Cameron Hodge. Yeah, I understand this is like, we have 2 more parts after this, right, for Extinction Agenda? Yeah, 8 and 9. But, oh, man. 272 for me. I love it. Jim Lee and Scott Will. Are you kidding me? Did you pick a Jim Lee book? All right, let's see what you did. Well, let's see what you did. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's funny. Even though I teased you like right in the middle of crossover, I had 270 and 273 on my list.
Are you serious? Oh, 270.
Pretty deep, probably like the top 25. 270 because it's like earlier in the crossover, and I think. But you're right. I would definitely pick this over that. I think you're right that this is just more of a issue that has everything you want all in one place. But then 273, I kind of like denouement issues where like everything kind of settles and people are like, what do we do next? What are we going to do now? I love the issues where they say like, what are we going to do with 13 X-Men? I really like those issues. So I kind of really like 273 for that reason. Or is it? Yeah, it's 273, not 274. But it's hard to argue against this one. I mean, I think if we're except for what I pick next, of course, because I think it's really iconic Jim Lee. And I don't say that in a punching back way. I just think I was like, I want the Jim Lee issue. What is it? Jim Lee X-Men issue.
Okay. I'm not going to lie. I had to fight that. Like, I legit fought that because I just said, this isn't the right choice, but it is my choice. The right choice
Yeah.
is something like 268, right? 268 is the choice that I think a lot, or even X of Vengeance Part 1. When people think of Jim Lee X-Men or Adjectiveless X-Men #1, which mutants do you think like?
Because they're all so fun and
Glob Herman.
I mean, it certainly wouldn't be Bobby, not Sam, because he's from. I think Magma, because she just came from Nova Roma, so she doesn't know any modern music, and then they just put her into the 80s, and I could just see them all thinking yacht rock is so uncool, and Magma being like, yeah, but it's like really pleasant, like, and just not realizing how.
I love that you actually put some thought into it. Don't you dare say Forge. Forge would not. He would not hang with that. Anything else about this amazing manly cover too? Look at Wolverine's rage and the menacing Warren back there.
And by the way, this is how you do a group of people on covers. I hate montage covers that just have like floating heads or as people out of proportion to each other. They don't really have a relationship to each other in the space here. They're really just 4 characters placed in proportion to each other. But it's 4 kind of pin-up-y looks that all work and create like visual interest on the cover and create lines for you to follow. And so I think Jim Lee's actually outstanding at that in this era. There's so many cover artists now who put characters like this in the cover and they have not only do they have no visual relationship in the space, but it doesn't create anywhere for your eye to go. But there's a strong top right to bottom left sweep here from Cable's head to Storm the Mill to Archangel's wing. Then there's Wolverine in the foreground and like carrying you up. There's just so many great lines. I love that stuff. I mean, we could get Great House on here and we could just talk about like visual communication and like how to carry the eye. And I think this cover really is a lot of fun with that.
No feet, though.
No feet.
Okay. What do you got for me, Peter?
I think
you bastard. You went the cheap way out. Okay, go ahead. Tell me, Peter.
So look, I originally actually had X-Men #3 because that was my first X-Men comic book. And it's the end of this. And it's the end of Claremont. I do think X-Men 3, Claremont just has so many monologues he wants to get through.
I think he's getting paid by the word at that time.
Over the years, this has kind of risen up as my favorite. I also almost put 4, the first Omega Red, because it's the issue where they play basketball together, which is like the first like downtime issue that we got in this era. And it's really where you see Gambit and Rogue flirting for the first time. So I really like 4. But this one, it's just such a complete issue. It has so many parts. It has the X-Men fighting themselves in the Danger Room. It has all the intrigue with Cortez and who will become the Acolytes going to space because they want to talk to Magneto and Asteroid M. It has Magneto coming and fighting the X-Men. It's just huge. It's epic. And like, it didn't date at all. Like, it still just reads so good, so big, so kinetic. And it just holds a special place in my heart because it was every comic I bought in 1991, 92, all through the 90s was chasing the high of turning the pages of this comic. I got it for Christmas 1991. My family got me a set of all the covers, A, B, C, D, and this was E that had the fold out. And I think in a way, my whole life, all of these books, everything has been just chasing the feeling of turning the pages of this issue the first time that I got
it. I don't think I have an argument against the biggest selling comic of all time.
I mean, there's that too. But then it's also like, is this a popularity contest? Do we need to pick the biggest selling comic of all time for this?
Well, obviously not. I went with Uncanny 272 because I was like, oh man, I love Jim Lee.
And you might be right.
Remove your emotional nostalgia attachment. X-Men 1 is a bad comic. Claremont and Lee are completely at odds with each other when it comes to storytelling.
You're not wrong. I mean, there are points in the movie you can see them pulling in opposite directions.
Obviously, they were at odds with each other. We just didn't know how much at odds until much later. But I think nostalgia, that's what this is about, though, right? It's about how it makes us feel, whether it's a good comic or a great comic or a really crappy comic.
That's what I picked a few.
Because there is no wrong answer, right? I mean, there's absolutely, I mean, Peter's got horrible, horrible choices, but there is no wrong answer. All right. I have nothing to say. I love this book too. I love I have the deluxe edition. Do you own the 2.0, X-Men 2.0?
I don't, and I usually am against recolors. Is that Thomas Mason doing those recolors? It's one of the few good recolors. It's tasteful.
I don't have it either, and I don't know why. I found it at a Half Price Books about 6 years ago, and I was like, that's in an omnibus. I don't need that. But they chose the classic colors for it. But yeah, I've always wanted it. I don't know why I didn't pick it up. This is my era of Jim Lee. I love this era of Jim Lee. And I think a lot of people did. Yeah, X Factor 87. Absolutely.
Yeah, this was on my list pretty far.
There was no way this is not going to be on my list. Like, it's everything I love about Peter David in one issue. And I think I've explained over and over the power of Peter David. I believe it was his wife at the time that helped co-write some of this, because we are talking about the character of Doc Samson, like doing, a deep psychological study on each of these people and the understanding of what makes them tick, what makes them work, what makes them the way they are, and also the flaws that they don't share with everybody, right? Oh my gosh, like in one page, you get that story of Strong Guy, and you're like, oh, that's why he is the way that he is. But I think the one that comes out of this the most is Quicksilver. Like, I don't think anybody liked Quicksilver. None of my friends, nobody at the comic book shop, I couldn't think of anybody that liked Quicksilver. And after reading this issue, I was like, Quicksilver is not that bad of a guy. Like, he's actually a misunderstood dude. And that's his problem. Wow, man, this is... It was almost too good for comics, the way this is written. Plus, is Joe Quesada's, like, early Marvel work, too. I dig it.
If there's one reason I ultimately didn't put it on mine, is that I love Joe Quesada 90s art. I love Larry Stroman, and I wanted to have some like weirder art in my choices, which I don't think I actually succeeded in. And I just think in my heart, I wanted to pick 71 because it has them opening the jar of Grey Poupon, and it has all, and
that joke Larry came back in the annual, remember? The man.
Yeah. And I think I just like, it was one of those things where it split the vote. Like, I kept being like 71, 87, 71, 87. And at the end, I just didn't put it on. But yeah, I think if you're somebody who's never read this issue and you're listening to us being like, that sounds weird, that sounds boring, this is just one of those issues you just have to read. It's just such a unique issue that I think spawned a whole genre of issues like this. And you just have to read it to have read it.
There was a follow-up to this and I even love the follow-up's cover because it's the perspective of the X Factor characters looking at Doc Samson, but it's in the X Factor Investigations era. Yeah, before the crossovers, before Peter David just said, I can't do this anymore, that was X Factor 87. You're old people arguing about, we're not arguing, Bar. Just because people raise their voice doesn't mean they're arguing. They're either Latino or one of them is hard of hearing.
Or Italian and hard of hearing. Yeah.
Not old. Were you reading these as these were coming out, or did
yeah, I was monthly at this point. Yeah, I still have my original.
What an excellent question! Like, legit excellent question. Which writers wrote Cyclops' character the best? Who do you think has a good understanding of Cyclops?
I want to sidebar to this. I'll make my way back to it, Jack Ferry, because I sometimes have the misfortune of being addicted to Reddit. Somebody on Reddit was saying, why do you think they've done Cyclops so badly in the last 20 years in comics? Is because he was like bad in the early X-Men films. And I had to push back and say, that's a myth. Cyclops has kicked ass in the comic books for the last like 20, 25 years. He's amazing in New X-Men, Astonishing X-Men, the Utopia era, the Revolutionary era. It's nothing but good Cyclops. And I think this idea of bad Cyclops or boring Cyclops kind of comes from what he did with Maddie and then losing to Storm into a one. And then he's kind of this wet blanket in X Factor.
But do you think that comes from the internet and the world we live in, where you're only getting small glimpses of somebody's character? Like,
no, I hated him. When I got on the internet in like 2010 and found out that people liked Cyclops, I'm like, you morons. Because to me, Cyclops was that like leaving Maddie, like constantly whining, always looking lame compared to Wolverine. Like, that was Cyclops to me. And then I think the original animated series kind of stuck with that stick in the mud version of Cyclops. But the reason I say all that is because I think actually in my top 5 of Cyclops writers is probably the combination of Lobdell and Nicieza. I think they both loved him, and they made it one of their top missions to just like rehabilitate him into somebody cool. And I think he's really cool throughout both sides of their runs on X-Men. And they really find like the heart in him, even though he almost cheats on Jean with Cyclops. They kind of repair his relationship with Wolverine. They make him a good dad to Cable. I think all of the good Cyclops we got from afterward from that, I think stems from their Cyclops. I would also probably nominate Whedon. I would probably also nominate Fraction. I would probably also nominate Bendis. I'd probably Hickman. All the big dudes on X-Men really got Cyclops, I think, pretty well.
I liked Mike Carey, who, because when I think of people that don't or that get him, I would say Mike Carey in recent years, and I really liked what Hickman was doing with him towards the beginning. Kind of making him that military soldier son that Professor X always needed. I thought that was a bad. Oh, I tell you what, X-Men '97, those dudes got it.
When I saw that first episode, the first thing I did was get online and chat to a friend. They finally got Cyclops right. That was the first thing I said.
He was so badass, and not necessarily the whole Maddie thing had happened yet. I would say Whedon, because several reasons, but those 2 issues with Emma, there's 2 issues where you don't see the dialogue, and then it ends like it's towards the end, and it's to me my X-Men ending, and I was like, oh my god, Cyclops is badass! I can't believe I just said that. Like, because I forget how Cyclops was written poorly sometimes. I do agree. Nicieza had that. He wanted to make him into a father that lost his son and wants to reunite with him, but he never really got that chance because every little mini series he tried with went on to become something else. But yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it's like you can see little hints of it, because now that I'm reading like every issue in order in that era, you'll find these great Cyclops moments like tucked away in like one panel of Cable. Like, it's not like there's any X-Men run where it's like Cyclops being great, but if you've read all of Nicieza's work in the mid-90s, you realize what he was trying to do. And like you said, he kind of just gets interrupted time and time again by the other things that are happening.
You know what's funny about this statement? He just leaves his wife and kid to another woman. Even Marvel got in on the joke. I shared that with Peter about the state of New York. What was it? I can't remember what it was. And it was a meme of Cyclops and Maddie and then Jean Grey walking this way.
So those of us who came in at a certain period, like, that's who he was. Like, you have to understand.
Oh, yeah, if you came in reading that.
Like, that was the period you came in on. So that was who he was.
And interviewing the writers, most of them were not on board with the idea. Zero modern X-Men comics and listen. Well, we are going in chronological order, and we are in 92, I think. Oh, it says right there, release date 1992. That's right. The reason people think Cyclops sucks is the animated Lee era in the movies.
Yeah, the original movies.
Oh, the movies. I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
People talk about Gambit and 97. Cyclops was the star. Cyclops owned it, man. Modern comics are overrated. Harvey Picard, of course, would say that. In a 60-year history of X-Men, odds are most of the greatest ones aren't from the last decades. Well, we will see. Really new to comics and just started reading X-Men. I really think Cyclops is a little annoying. I didn't know a lot of people hate him. Oh, yeah. Welcome to the party, pal. Lots of people hated that guy.
Denocom, it has taken me years to finally let go of how much I hated him and enjoy him in comics. I had such a internal reaction to him that I just finally was like, that you're reacting to Cyclops from 1987 still,
97 was great because he was having fun and his cheating actually makes sense. He was killed off in X-Men 3 and most members didn't even notice. Dude, he was killed off screen in X-Men 3 and by the end I was like, they're not gonna bring him. Oh man, I hate that movie. I hate that movie so much. All right.
I don't even acknowledge it. Yeah.
Let's go on to the next one, which is this one's me. I love this issue. I absolutely love this issue. It's romantic, and I know people are like, oh, gross, it's Jean and Cyclops, gag me. What about I think that I almost picked the Dark X-Men Confession as one of my favorites because that made me believe in the Emma and Scott relationship. I thought that was a really good issue that I was like, oh, this actually works. But there's no denying that this is a beautiful issue. Not just the wedding vows, which, by the way, I told Fabian, he says, I borrowed heavily for my own wedding vows, but the father and son's moment when like Professor X rolls into the room where the guys are getting ready and none of them know how to tie a bow tie, and he's giving them a lesson. And as he's giving them a lesson about life and, you know, growing up, he is doing the bow tie for Cyclops. And I was like, oh God. And then the dance where he's embarrassed, like he doesn't want her to use her, or Professor X doesn't want her to use her powers, and she's like, I don't care, and she still, you know, dances with him using her telekinesis. I love this. I love this issue. Absolutely love it. Andy Kubert and I think Matt Ryan did the inks on this one. Yeah. So
yeah, I think to me it's that all of Professor X's lines in this stand out. Professor X was really well written in this little period. I actually almost picked Uncanny X-Men 298, which is such an unremarkable issue, but or maybe it's 299. I think it's 298, and he goes on effectively CNN and he argues for mutant rights, but he's pretending to just be an ally and not be a mutant. And then Beast is there as the mutant voice, and Graydon Creed is there as the anti-mutant voice. And Professor Xavier almost has to play the role of the centrist, but really actually steer people towards allyship. And I always come back to that. I'm like, wow, that still resonates today. You could almost play it verbatim on CNN today and remove the word mutants and put many other people who are hated and feared today, and it reads just the same. But I think actually that his monologue about how much he loves them and how they're his family in this is also among my favorite Professor Xavier monologues of all time. Also, this is them starting to integrate Rachel into actually having a relationship with Jean and Scott, which I really like because Rachel is one of my favorite characters. That happens in this issue. I'm kind of surprised you didn't pick X-Men 25, honestly.
I actually it would not have been 25, but Wolverine 75.
75,
which is the aftermath. But again, it was like not my favorite Wolverine stories. And if I'm just sticking to 10, it was hard. This list was difficult, but it was a lot of fun to put together. I thought this one almost didn't make it, but the more I thought about it, the more it meant more to me. So yeah, and
it doesn't get more personal than I included it in my wedding vows. Like if we're talking about
so I have to have
personal
it, right?
connections to comic books. Like, yeah.
What the hell is Warren saying now? I also don't care for Jean either.
Well, Warren, we can't always agree.
Even though I hate Cyclops, I always saw him and Jean together. No, not Emma. Yuck. So you don't like Emma. You don't like Jean. Do you? What is that? Well, I wish Amanda was here. What is that term when you fanfic yourself into the story?
I think Warren Weaver he's a Lee Forrester truther. He still thinks.
Lee. Well, that's a little old school. Lee was sharp though, man. She was a sharp blonde. Okay. And we're moving on to Pete's choice. Gen X1.
I'm not going to be shy here. I think this is the coolest X-Men issue of all time. Baccello, have we decided? Baccello's art is on another level that he himself rarely even attained again here. Inked significantly by Mark Buckingham. It doesn't matter that it's a number one. I think, honestly, you could interchange this with any of Generation X 1, 2, 3, and 4. I just reread them a couple months ago. They're just... X-Men was never this cool. And what's funny is it was cool for 1994 and edgy for 1994, but somehow it still kind of reads that way, even though it's from now 30 years ago. It still just has this, like, this is the youth. This is in contrast to all the old X-Men. This is about like teenagers being like, sup to each other as they meet each other. The character designs, the art, the little subtle humor, the creepiness, the body horror. I think X-Men fans need to read this in 10 X-Men issues because it's just a thing that you're not going to get if you only keep reading issues of Uncanny X-Men. It doesn't get this stylish, it doesn't get this horrific, it doesn't get this weird. It's just so cool, Omar. It's so cool.
I will say that this issue reminded me when this came out, 1994. I think I was a junior in high school, and I remember thinking it had like a very indie feel to it because
It
I
did,
knew
yeah.
Machado from like his run on Death. So the first Death, The High Cost of Living, not The Time of Your Life. But I thought it had like an indie flair to his art, and I loved the characters. I really liked the start of this, and it had that beautiful chromium cover. And nostalgic because we hadn't had a New Mutants book. You know, New Mutants by then had turned into X-Force, so they became more of a militant type of X-Men story. And I needed that in my life, right? I was still in high school and dealing with like teenage problems. Wanted to see other people like me in comics. And we did. We had a Latino, the dude, Skin. Then he was not my favorite. I still like Jubilee and Husk. I think they're among my favorite characters. Oh, Chamber was awesome
I
too.
love Chamber.
What
He's
an
another
awesome
one that
character
is
idea
one
too.
of my like spirit characters is Chamber.
Like, what a great idea, right? Like, dude blew off his chest and bottom jaw. How can he talk? Oh, he also happens to be a psychic, so that's awesome. Yeah, man, I dig this one. This is a good choice. I like this one. This 10 list. I can't wait to start deleting some.
Oh, it's gonna be
So it's
hard.
gonna break our hearts, huh? When it's a yes or no. Wow,
So
what an
Omar,
what is
this?
Okay, not
What
based on
is
the
this?
cover, my friend. Don't judge me. It's not old man perv Omar here. It's actually a story about Morph. And what makes Morph such an awesome character. Okay, this is an era of comics. This came out around 2002, and I had just come back to comics because of Grant Morrison's new X-Men, and I'm like, I'm going to get some back issues. What is Exiles? And then the guy at the comic store sold it to me as, dude, it's Quantum Leap meets X-Men, and I'm like, sold. Two of my favorite things. Oh my gosh, it was so good. Like, those first 24 issues are some of the best underrated X-Men. And John Winnick, who to me at the time was writing very Claremontish type of tropes. So Morph, the character that we knew from Age of Apocalypse and then Blink, those are the main characters. But in here, Morph, we think of like a comedic character. But in this issue, you see him like he's a tragic figure, and the things that he jokes about are the reason or why he's coping, how he's coping with just his internal breakdown. It's a great issue. Odd cover, but it's a beautiful issue that I think sums up why I love these characters of the Exiles, and I wish we would get that omnibus one day. Yes, we really needed that. Thank you. Yes, thank you. And that is a Sunfire from another universe. So yeah, they're X-Men from different universes. I'm just here to spam Happy New Year to you too. We're great. And then I read greeted by the old perv. Is she? Stop, Joe Cool. Besides, you're Canadian, aren't you? Aren't you Canadian? Not that it has anything to do with it. We need an Ultraverse team. All right. But that's why I edited here. I don't know how you feel. We never talk about Exiles whenever we talk about because with solicits we never bring up the Exiles, right? There's no.
Well, I'm not a big universe fan, so it's kind of like. But it is good. You're not wrong. Especially the first 2 years. I don't know. I think when I thought about this issue, all I remember is like, aren't they at a nude beach? Like that was all that really popped up.
He was morphing into different characters. Yeah, there he is. Yeah,
but you're right. And I think I like any issue that really like digs into who a character is. And it's so hard to pick those for this list because I'm like, is it my favorite of all time? I think you did a better job with that. I think I had a really good Mystique issue that I threw away. I had a really good Nightcrawler issue that I threw away.
Well, I
had to get down to 10,
during the Sean McKeever era or the I ain't got beef with Canadians. You people are cool with me. Who wrote Exiles? At the beginning, it was Judd Winnick, and then later on, it was Tony Bedard. Chris Claremont came in. But we don't talk about this team because there's no collected editions of it, really.
Yeah, they haven't even done those complete collections. They reprinted them in like 2016 or something like that. It's been a while. Yeah, I'm sure my guide says, but
Ultimate Collections, I think. And then they did reprint just volume 1, and that was it. And called it. It would be 2 Omnis. Does Dupe count as a mutant? I throw in Wolverine and that mirrors Omnidog Spirit Mutant. Behind on the stream, pause for a work call, but I'm in the same boat as Peter. I really like Cyclops now, but I had to get past my mental block of not liking old Scott.
You got it. You got me, Kyle. You feel me.
All right, what's next? Ooh, another super sexy cover, Peter.
If we're talking about iconic X-Men issues that I love, that changed who these characters are. Look, I'm not the hugest Grant Morrison X-Men fan, but I do have certain favorite issues in this run. I really love the first couple of issues from E for Extinction. I love some Riot at Xavier's. I actually like the next issue, 140, which probably is my favorite panel of Jean of all time. And Dom was trying to convince me late into the night last night that I really should put on 140 instead of 139. This is the Psychic Affair issue. And you think it's going to be all about Cyclops as this cheating man. But actually, Morrison shifts the camera and really makes it all about Jean and Emma, who have always been intertwined all the way back to X-Men 130 and 131, which is why I almost picked those. But actually, I'm kind of happy that Omar picked the wedding issue, because I think this is like a funny bookend to the wedding issue. It's also, I don't know that anybody's ever drawn Jean better than Phil Jimenez up until Russell Dauterman drawing Jean. And then there's some of the newer artists in the past year or two. Wernick also draws a really great Jean. But I just think that it's more than the adultery issue, and it has so many great meme panels in it because of the adultery issue. But it's also one of those character dissection issues where there's no big fight, there's no big significant event happening. It's really just getting deep into the psyche as Emma and Jean just keep peeling back layers of each other. And I wanted to make sure I had at least one issue like that on my list. And because I think Morrison probably was the best Jean writer up until Gillen, and I think that Jimenez was probably the best Jean drawer up until Dauterman, to me, this one is iconic.
I cannot disagree with that cover. That's my 2 cents. I like this issue too. Morrison, for me, their new X-Men was very much like the whole JLA run that Morrison worked on. It was like a freaking roller coaster. Got me sometimes on the highs and then coming down. I'm like, woo! And then I'm like, oh man, this is so dull and stupid. What am I still doing reading this book?
Yeah.
And then I'm having fun. And then, like, I think most people probably agree, like, E for Extinction is just where it's at. And, like, it's such a great start. Ups and downs. But this was, I like this. And I the whole affair thing, I think I remember reading that, and it came at a weird time because I was going through, my first marriage. It was a failing marriage, and like there was all these things that kind of almost touched home a little too much. So I remember that, like, these issues coming out, this and at the same time that Extreme was coming out during this time, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Claremont's Extreme, yeah. Wait,
this is also me.
Okay,
I have a way.
3, huh? Okay, let's talk. Oh, this is gonna be good. This is gonna be good, my friend.
I know. I have a way of always coming in on issue number 3, and this was we were on a road trip. I forget to where. I walked into like a Tower Records or like a little bookstore, and I was waiting at the cash register, and I was turning the spinner rack, and I wasn't reading comics at that time. Comics was over for me, and I saw this, and I was like, Joss Whedon, what's Astonishing? I knew Astonishing X-Men as one of the titles from Age of Apocalypse.
Age of Apocalypse, yeah. Or no, and then Apocalypse of 12, right?
No. It was, they did an Age of Apocalypse, and then they also did it in the 12. Yeah.
Right.
And then I read it. This issue is so rereadable. It's got so many great sequences in it. Again, I like downtime issues, and this one stands out in my mind because it's like kind of like where they start to realize they're actually going to be a team, but they're still really conflicting. And then it ends with them realizing somebody dead came back, and at that point in this issue, they think it's Jean. And I thought it was Jean too, because I didn't have any contact.
The whole internet, it's Joss Whedon and John Cassaday released that image, right? That leaked image. So people are like, bleeding cool. We're spreading the news like Jean's coming back. And we're like, wow, that was quick. Warren, please excuse yourself. Like,
you know, Warren, I value anybody who doesn't see the joy in something where everybody else sees the joy. Because I'm serious. It reminds you that like joy isn't universal, and there's a reason these stories should work and should hit. And like people mock me all the time for like not liking the stuff that I don't like. Like I don't like Hickman Avengers. I just don't get it. No part of it like sings for me. And people are like, oh, Crisis, shut up, whatever. And like I really appreciate the person who's the 1 in 99 who's like, no, Astonishing X-Men just doesn't do it for me. I really find value in that.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I hate you, Warren. Do you think there was a contract clause with Grant that they couldn't bring Jean back right away? Absolutely not.
No, it's Quesada.
100%. It was Quesada. Yeah, that was all Quesada. Late to the party, but you're here. Hey, what's going on? We were just talking about, Fabian Iciesa Cyclops. Yeah. James Moore does not agree, though. He thinks it is far the most overrated run. It's just slamming the nerd nostalgia button over and over, and it's undoing the progressive style Morrison made me quit X-Books for a decade. I hated it.
But what about that Cassidy art, though?
James liked Morrison, and that's okay. Are we ever going to know how Pox's story was supposed to end? Oh, yeah, you got the ending. Hickman was overseeing that ending.
Yeah, that was
all Hickman. I mean, that was Hickman's like, here's the way I would have done it. And then they got to write it. Yeah. So you did get that. You got it. Okay. I love Astonishing X-Men. It is the run that solidified my return to comics. But I went with 6. It's hilarious that you were only 3 issues away.
But neither of us picked 4, which is the one that people usually pick,
everybody
where Kitty finds Colossus, and she has that when she phases through him, and then she stops and turns around when Cassidy passed away, God rest him, that everybody's like, nobody's ever shown acting on a panel like that. Like it's so, you know, I thought it was funny that we both picked issues on either side of it.
So this is after James Ward had talked about how overrated this is, and I'm sorry. You can call me what is the word term, a mid or whatever. I'm just a normal dude that likes X-Men comics, but this is by far my favorite issue of Astonishing and one of my favorite X-Men comics. Oh my god! So you had the Return of Colossus, who'd been dead. He comes back, and it's a beautiful moment between him and Kitty Pryde, like connecting. Oh my gosh. And then like when what's his name is getting away in the spaceship, and Wolverine realizes, his friend's back, and he's like, you good, Colossus? And Colossus is like, I am strong. And he's like, I got 2 words for you. And then the beautiful spread page where he just does the fastball special. Doesn't even say it. Doesn't even need to say it, Peter. It's that good. I think I shed a tear. Manly eye sweat. And that solidified my return to comics. Like, I remember thinking, if comics are this good, I shouldn't have left. I should have stayed.
That's how I felt too when I read 3. That is, I was like, wow, have I been missing comics this good? Spoiler, I hadn't really. But
right? Oh, I had neither, man. And so ups and downs. But
I think it's like it's one of those other things where when something gets really, really popular and then people read it after and they're like, well, I don't see it. Well, you don't see it because you're reading it 20 years later. Like we were reading this in 2003 after comics had kind of rejected Omar and us to be like, we're not going to tell those iconic stories. We're going to just chase speculation. We're going to we both left in a similar period for similar reasons. And I think there's a reason that so many fans from that era identify with Astonishing, because it was like, had that magic. And Morrison was doing something very, very different. So sometimes Morrison hits for us, sometimes it doesn't. It's hard now to hand Astonishing to somebody and have it have the impact that it had for us then, because much like Miller and Hitch Ultimates, it's been so interpolated across so many other stories since then that it doesn't seem as thrilling as it was at that time, which is fine. But if we're talking about our favorites, clearly you and I together are going to pick an issue of Astonishing X-Men because it brought us back to comic books.
Oh, it was like coming back home, and it signified that. Like it was like, I had talked about, like, during your new X-Men pick, I was in the middle of a divorce, and when Astonishing was coming out, it was like that part of my life was over. I had to my personal story, like I had to file bankruptcy because my ex just threw a bunch of debt my way that did not belong to me. I was always good with money, and then needless to say, I had to move back in with my mom and dad. And my mom and dad never, of course, like any good parent, will take you back in. And it felt like coming back home. And that's what I always think of when I think of this run. It's like coming back home. It was a beautiful return home. And there are days that I wish I could still live in that room and not have any kind of responsibilities. But here we are. And I think that anytime I open this book up, and if you look at my omnibus books, oh my gosh, Astonishing is the one that's falling apart. I'm like, why did I give away the one that they reprinted? I should have kept that one and given away my crappy copy. It means a lot to me. So yeah. Ooh, dude, this is gonna be hard because there's no way we're gonna put 2 books.
No, we're gonna have to, and I think we could maybe just agree on 4. Maybe we could compromise on 4.
So we only give it 10. All right, what's next?
No, I mean putting issue 4, since I picked 3 and you picked 6. Maybe
I'm standing my ground, Peter. Messiah Complex.
Average the 2 issue numbers.
I think this is my pick. Yeah, it is. I didn't know if you had picked it. I love events, despite I also hate events. But I think I more so love events. I think events, if done properly, can be a lot of fun. And X-Men hadn't had an event in a long time. I had a podcast, and I remember interviewing Joe Quesada before we interviewed him, like in early 2007. And I told him, I was like, I'm loving X-Men comics. I'm loving them. But it feels like they're not really talking to each other, that they're not connected during this time of like 2004, 2005, 2006. There's nothing that brings them together. And he's like, yeah, we're going to fix that later this year. And then we got this announcement that they were going to do this crossover of Messiah Complex. Now, keep in mind, this is after House of M, and this introduces us to the hope that there could be more than 198 mutants born. And oh man, it hit all of the check boxes for me. Like it hit all of the villains, right? Like you've got the Marauders, you've got like all these obscure villains that show up through this crossover. You've got all the big hits, the heavy hitters. You got the new X-Men that are a part of this crossover. And you're like, ooh, new X-Men is important because it's like I love this crossover. And it started with this right here, drawn by my favorite artist, Mark Silvestri, which is why I put the genocide porn era. Well, that was the Kali Yost era, though, right? I mean, that's what they did. They came in and they're like, we need to wipe away some mutants. Old school Claremont was like, hold my beer, I did that already, and Mutant Massacre. But now we had like 198 mutants, and that was still too many for a lot of people. Yeah, but I love this, man. I love this era.
I really looked in the latter half. What did you think? Well, I looked in the latter half of the 2000s, the early 2010s, because I really do like a lot of those comics. I really wanted to put an issue of Peter David's X-Factor Investigations. I think that's a better run than the original X-Factor. It was hard to just pick one issue. I almost put 45, which is the first issue where Shatterstar and Richter kiss. But then I reread it, and I was like, I don't know if this is like a great issue, or I just love that panel and that particular story moment. I almost put in Deadly Genesis because, like Warren Weaver, I do actually love it. Deadly Genesis, Banshee getting hit by a jet. Let's go. And then I almost put in like you said earlier, putting Dark X-Men: The Confession. I almost put an issue of Utopia. I almost put an issue. We're skipping ahead a little bit. I'll tell you, didn't use it. I almost put. I forget if it's 522 or 523, where Magneto says that he's going to bring Kitty back on the bullet, especially because of Greg Land, my favorite artist. But I just didn't feel like there was any one issue that was like the one that really had my heart in this era, except for maybe that one where Dazzler's like singing that thumping song in the club, like 508, 507, 508. I don't know. Omar, I'll tell you this. I love Messiah Complex. I do not love the coloring in this era where everything is like so plasticky and shiny. And I think it takes away from the impact of Silvestri. And I think if we're making a book that's supposed to be like a beautiful artifact, I'm like, oh, there's like so much better colors than Silvestri. And I know that's me being a coloring nerd, but when I think of Messiah Complex, I just think of everybody being too shiny.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
But I love this story. I love this issue. I think it's a cool X-Men issue. I don't know. This one I'm maybe a little softer on.
Where is Hope? I didn't read Krakoa era, so was she around? Yeah. She was one of the 5, right? don't know. I'm not really spoiling things outside of the books we're talking about, but yeah, she was one of the 5 important mutants. I will say that.
She plays a huge role in all of Krakoa from the first issue to the last issue. That is
she was a big part of the Fall of X.
Yeah.
1 and 2, X-Men 67, 68, Giant Size 2, 4 and 8, 60 to 63 and 66, 133, 268, and 138, published 1972 and earlier. Johnson.
That is a tight list.
That's your list. That's it.
67, 68 are, yeah, interesting picks.
I almost went with X Factor 68. I'm not even gonna lie. I love Endgame. Okay, we got 2 more, right? Or 3 more? 3 more, I think. This is all you, baby. Dark Angel Saga.
I had Uncanny X-Force #1 on my list pretty much from the moment I started it. I think Uncanny X-Force is a perfect #1 is a perfect script. I think there's a real magic to writing a good #1 issue that establishes the voices of each character rather than writing a #1 that's like tries to just introduce one character and then the cliffhanger is that there's more people or it focuses on one as your point of view character. It's a real marvel. Another *1 actually that I almost put on that I think it was my number 13 and I had to leave it off was All New Wolverine #1 from 2016 by Tom Taylor writing Laura Kinney as Wolverine. Perfect #1 script. Great art. I think David Lopez. However, in refining my list, I was like, well, why we got to pick #1s? I kind of was thinking the same thing like Omar did with picking 141 with the end of Burns run. I was like, let's pick some endings. This is the end of the Dark Angel saga. And I don't think you have to read the whole thing to get what happens. It kind of encapsulates it here. There's great fights. It's amazing Lapina art with Dean White on coloring, one of my favorite art teams of the past 20 years. And it, I think, is one of the best Psylocke issues of all time. And I liked the kind of poetry of having 213 on my list and having this on my list. It's also a great Angel issue. I almost picked X Factor 24, which is the reveal of Angel as the horseman of war or death. Yeah. So that was on my list for a while. And this has such a great ending sequence. I won't spoil it if you've never read the Dark Phoenix saga, or I mean the Dark Angel saga. I actually bought the last couple issues of this in singles, even though I was buying collections at the time because I just could not wait for the collection to come out. I was so hooked and I cried my face off.
Yeah,
and actually, I couldn't even get this if I wanted to get it keyed, CGC. I can't because there are literal tear stains in my issue of Uncanny X-Force 18.
It's going to be hard to curate this list of 10 because of things like this, inclusions like this. Because I think this is it's one of those perfect comics. I also enjoyed this. I honestly am surprised you added it because I didn't think you were a big Rick Remender fan. Okay, you're not. Okay, that's what I thought. But it's very Rick Remender-ish in the way that the story is done, and like it's got the Rick Remender tropes that I love, but it's not for everybody. So I'm glad that you added it, and it's got tiebacks to the Age of Apocalypse. If you read that, you're gonna be like, oh, they go back to the Age of Apocalypse. Oh man. It's solid. I like this choice.
And I'll say 2 other things.
Peña's artwork.
I'm a coloring nerd. I'm a coloring nerd. And I think for all the reasons I don't really like your pick because the coloring just is like no fun to look at. Like I love Dean White's coloring because he uses white as a color. It's not just the absence of white. He uses white to highlight things, but he also just uses white as a color on costumes, in art, on people's bodies. And I think that really makes a difference. And the other thing is I wanted something tragic because I think the X-Men are about tragedy without it being genocide porn, right? I think so much of X-Men is like bigotry porn and genocide porn, which has its place in X-Men, but I'm kind of done with that now as a reader. I'm over it. Krakoa made me be like, I don't care if X-Men's about that anymore. That's why I think so many of the new X books are so shitty. But this is a tragic, we can get into that. But this is a tragic X-Men book that's not about mutants being bad. This is just tragic on a personal level. And I actually really like it for that reason. It's one of the saddest X-Men issues because of a personal loss, and nobody hated mutants to get there. There was no mutant hatred involved.
Yeah. I can't disagree with that because I actually, like I said, I'm very, I like Remender a lot, and I eat all his tropes, and they're all in this saga, and it was a long saga. 2010. All right. Oh my god, and not the last one. That means you picked something more recent than this? Okay.
Just slightly.
Oh. House of X2 is the revelation about the many lives of Moira McTaggart, right? That all this time she's been a mutant. And if you're an X-Men fan and you're a longtime reader, you can go about this two ways. You can go, ew, that's stupid. Never gonna happen. I'm done with comics, which happens a lot, right? Or you can go like, holy shit, that was amazing. What? They've been planning this for a long time. Oh my god, Jonathan Hickman read every issue of X-Men, like every issue of X-Men, because there were moments that I was going back like, okay, that actually kind of makes sense if we're gonna tie it to these old random issues like 255. Like maybe Destiny and Moira had this. I love when a retcon is done properly.
Right. It should enhance. It should always enhance issues, not apologize for, not ruin, not like turn them on their head and make you. It should always enhance what's in there.
And it's rare that I get excited over retcons. Like I think Green Lantern Rebirth is, to me, one of the best retcons ever in comic book history. I think it was done right, and you still respect the history of the character. You can still respect the history of Moira McTaggart and say, okay, well, that life of her, she was a good person. But she's evil in this life, right? So it makes sense. Oh my gosh. This comic went in the 2019, so modern. It's crazy to say modern. It's 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago. Math. But it made me happy to, being an X-Men fan, I've always compared it to like being in an abusive relationship, right? It's like, oh, you have good moments, and then you have like, why am I still here washing dishes? I hate my life. But I mean, that's kind of the way it is for so many years after reading these books. Sometimes it treats you good to a nice dinner, and other times you're eating by yourself and microwaving your own meal. This was the one comic I remember thinking, I am so glad to be an X-Men reader. And it makes me happy that I remember I actually joined your show. Peter used to have a show reviewing these books that were coming out weekly. I'm so glad I'm an X-Men fan, and it makes me happy that I'm reading X-Men in single issues. Oh my gosh. Oh my god.
And I just remember you being on the show, and you had not, I don't think you had fully watched one of our episodes because it was so brand new. And you didn't know that we went like panel by panel and talked about all the themes and everything. And that was probably the first time you met, maybe not Tyler, because you knew him from the group, but probably the first time you met Zach. And you were probably like, I just remember you on air being like, yo, I didn't know you guys were going to do all this.
I loved it, man. I loved it.
So I have read literally every Moira McTaggart appearance before this, now since this came out. And when I tell you it works so elegantly, I truly believe, and I hope to never know the answer so I can believe this. I truly believe Hickman read every word balloon that Moira McTaggart ever stated, and then he put them all up on his wall like Pepe Silva murder board style. And he was like, this retcon has to fit with every text that Moira has ever spoken. Even when you read something where it's like her saying, oh, I'm human, oh, the subtext of it works every single time. And it's part of what made me want to reread all of that X-Men, because I wanted to see if it worked, and it does. Now, my argument against this is it's such a bottle issue, and it's so playing with the form of X-Men and what X-Men means that like in a slim group of 10 issues that doesn't really have any more in it, does it even like read as X-Men? It's like almost its own genre of thing. I think it works here specifically because your first pick was Days of Future Past. So it kind of like, there's a kind of rhyme there in the same way that my Psylocke picks kind of rhyme, where you like start with them messing with continuity and you end with them messing with continuity. I think in some best of books, this would just stick out like in a weird way.
You mentioned it's a bottle type of story, and I agree. But you know what? I'm one of those weird dudes that like bottle episodes in TV shows.
I do too. Yeah.
Right. You're running on a low budget. Give me a good old bottle episode. I like character centric stories, and this was so good. And plus, it
Uh-oh. Did I freeze?
I'm not sure what happened, but I'm glad
You froze, and then I thought it was me who froze, so then I left, but then there was no one left. All the adults in the room.
It wasn't. So I don't know what just happened. It was some weird fluke. So I'm asking my daughter to bring my laptop just in case it happens again, so I have a backup. Because sometimes this happens when we're wired in. But anyway, sorry about that. It's funny that I said it as soon as I said it blew my nips off that we went dead, and I'm like, oh man, I got canceled by YouTube. That was quick.
YouTube can't. That was too explicit, Omar. We don't want to hear about the nips. We got
that
shut
was
it
explicit,
down.
but Tarun Grombeck the entire time yesterday was sure go. But yeah, that's mine. That's my pick. I'm not sure what we were talking about. You were talking about how right I was in your
Bottle episodes, things that fit and read on their own really well. Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm gonna go to yours, and there's my baby with my laptop. Wow, very close. Okay, tell me why.
I liked Powers of X better than House of X, and I will go to my X-Men deathbed saying that House of X2 should have been Powers of X2, because the whole deal was that Powers of X was going to deal with dilated timelines and House of X was going to tell a sequential story. It was a cheat to make the more issue House of X number 2. Powers of X number 5 is where it all comes together. You see Xavier in the past talking to Forge about that he's going to need a lot of data for this. Then you see him talking to Emma in the present at the Louvre, where he tells her that they're going to need her on board in order to make this happen. It's where Emma has her iconic statement for the children. I cried while reading this issue. I just didn't have a physical one to get tears on. And then there's the future timeline fuckery. Well, we're deep into the stream now, where Hickman plays with the idea of a Dominion and what teases how this is going to end, which, spoilers, it kind of does sort of end that way. Gillen and Ewing and Duggan kept Hickman's promise. I think this is encoded with all of the DNA that you need to understand what Krakoa is going to be about, and it kind of thrills you that X-Men can be about all this stuff. It can be about the heart in terms of Emma. It can be about the retcons in terms of Xavier and Forge. It can be in terms of giving all the villains amnesty, which is what happens here. And then Moore says, no, I don't need that from you. And then it also is about the big future thinking of what happens at, X to the power of 10 or X to the power of 1000. Actually, X to the power of 3, which is 1,000 years. So that, to me, this just has everything. It's funny that they use the Sinister cover for this. That was kind of a mistake. Sinister's big scene was in the prior issue, but the prior issue doesn't have Sinister on the cover, and then he's on the cover of this one. I did almost pick the prior issue because I love that Sinister's scene. It also has Doug, and Doug forming his relationship with Krakoa, which I really, really love also. But that Emma in the Louvre, my favorite piece of art in the world is Nike of Samothrace, which is in this the beautiful winged victory figure. It's on this huge pedestal in the middle of the Louvre in Paris. And there's so many comics that love to show that because it's such an amazing, amazing piece of art. It like broke my heart. It was so beautiful. I couldn't even talk while I was looking at it. And Silva draws it so spectacularly here, and in the background of this amazing scene with Emma, that it's just so memorable to me.
Um, this is going to be difficult because that is
I know it's another one where we picked things that are like a hair.
And I know it's definitely not one of these lists where it's like, okay, well, this era is represented by this. This is really our favorites. And if we were to create a collection of our favorite X-Men comics, what would fit in there? So it's no longer like, well, this book is represented by, or this era is represented by this book. Hey, before you create anything, can't YouTube stream from crashing. I got us back, didn't I? Hey, Minties, does anyone know where I can find a copy of New Mutants Omnibus Volume? It's out of print right now, I think, right? I think it's out of print.
You got to hit up those Facebook groups. You got to be on Facebook Marketplace, and you got to be in like the Facebook Omnibus groups. People sell stuff for cover to do people a solid. If you're on the like great wide internet, you're hunting for that bargain against every other person you missed on eBay. They will reprint it. I mean, they will. I don't have any insider information, but they will. But they don't usually reprint things closer than 2 years apart. So you're going to have to wait a little while. But I'm sure you'll find some that pop up on Facebook groups.
Although, you know, we do a reprint poll every year. Oh my gosh, it's coming around the corner. So make sure if you can't find one, vote for it. Huxpox was actually my introduction to X-Men comics. Loved it. You know, it's also Dom. I don't know if Dom is still here or not. It was his first comic book was Huxpox, like that era. And I'm curious, like what someone like Dom would have on his list. Maybe Dom and somebody else could do a stream together, picking their top 10 X-Men comics, because he's read a lot. But if you're coming at it from an angle of like 6 years, like how nostalgia for you is like, oh man, Huxpox, whereas Huxpox is like our most modern choice for both of us.
Until the last possible second, it might have been like it might have been the last book I cut. I had X-Men number 6, 2019 number 6 by Hickman, which is Mystique yelling, "Bring me my wife!"
Yeah.
I think that's an amazing issue. I also very late in the game had Immortal X-Men 5, which I want to say was a deep dive on Exodus, and 7, which was a deep dive on Kurt. I might have them backwards. It's weird to me that I didn't pick a Gillen issue because Gillen is my favorite X-Men writer. There's not a bit. I like him better than Claremont. I think Gillen is the king of writing X-Men. And hilariously, if you read his new book, The Power Fantasy, which is so incredible, the Power Fantasy is basically him saying, what if I did Immortal X-Men with no fighting? All these characters are nuclear bombs and they're not going to fight. They're just going to argue about it. And Immortal X-Men made me realize I'd have to go indie to do this. And in the back matter of issue 2 or 3, he writes about how to him writing X-Men was the easy version of doing that. And that the editors were like, you think this is easy? You just wrote a whole summer event by yourself. And he's like, yeah, but it's not as hard as Wicked and Divine. And I think that's so funny. That's a Gillen, much like I think a Morrison or a Hickman. Gillen is such a big brain comic writer that he's like, X-Men is like vacation time for me.
I love Dom, but he showed up in the chat just before he crashed. If this was a comic, would find that very suspicious. That is true, Dom. I'm here. Bless Hickman for getting me into X-Men and Marvel.
I also thought it was weird to not pick a Ewing issue. I had like Resurrection Magneto 1. I had X-Men Red 2. Some issues of Sword were really good. The one where Storm has dinner with Doom. I
didn't pick a single. It's back there. Zeb Wells Hellions issue, which
I had Zeb Wells Hellions number 1 on it at 1.4. Yeah.
I think 4 is the one where this is a moment with Nanny. He's having his monologue, and then Nanny says something. He's like, "Oh God, you're still here!" Like freaks out when he realizes that he's not alone. Oh man!
I also love the issue of Teenie Howard's Excalibur, where we finally get the full origin of what's her name that possesses Polaris with the collar. Malice. We get like the full history of Malice and how she became Malice. That issue. Solid. I would love to just do a top 10 Krakoa issues, honestly, because
that can be done. That can be done.
I feel bad that the list ends here. Like I could have just done 10 Krakoa issues. To me, Krakoa is X-Men. This is almost me saying, like, here's all this X-Men that I would like to put to bed once and for all. Because to me, all that matters now is what happened in Krakoa. I think every X-Men story from here to eternity will be judged by is it as good as Krakoa, and they will all get a thumbs down probably. But that's me personally as a reader.
This is awesome for someone like who's slightly older than Omar, so he must be in his like early 30s,
90s.
Outside of God Loves Man Kills, Hoxpox may be my favorite X-Men story too. It did a lot. I mean, seriously, it did a lot. And yes, we need a Mike. I agree with this. Mike Carey didn't make my list. All right, Peter, you know what that means.
Oh,
It's
I don't want to do
curating.
it.
That's right. And you know, and we can definitely hear from people too, because but at the end of the day, you know, if it comes to something we can't choose yes or no, then I'm going to leave it up to people, and I'll put a poll yes or no, and they can decide the fate of one of two of these books. I mean, look, here's the thing. I came ready. I came ready to talk to my friend, argue to the bitter end for some of these stories. But at the end of the day, I came ready to just lose a few of my favorites, and that's okay. So, I mean, I can go ahead and tell you the one that out of all these is ready to go. I don't mind cutting it.
All right, yeah, I'll tell you my ready to go if you tell me you're ready to go.
Mine is Exiles. It goes. I love it. I think it's a great issue. I think it's a perfect issue. I think it symbolizes everything that I love about the Exiles. It's happy, it's goofiness, yet there's sadness to it and death and but if it has to go, it has to go.
Yeah.
Sorry, Judge Winnick.
Don't delete it out of the presentation though, because then we lose all of Dom's work.
Oh no, I could just delete this one.
No, I'm saying don't delete the slide. Just like move it to the end or something. Jesus, don't ruin the
presentation. Okay, what's yours then?
Even though it's close to being my favorite comic on the list, I think I have to let go of Generation X #1. I just think it's a I don't know.
That's not the choice I thought you were gonna go for. Okay.
I don't know. Am I wrong? Chat, tell me if I'm wrong. I just feel like maybe I'm being too sentimental about how cool it was at the time, but I did just reread it and I thought it was good. But if it comes down to this or Excalibur, I'm going to fight to the death for Excalibur Special Edition because it's a complete story and this isn't. So I don't know. This is meant to be comics after our own heart, and it is. But I just don't know if I feel as strongly about it as I want to fight for the other stuff on my list. I don't know. What about you? You like this issue?
No, I do, but I respect your opinion, and I can let it go. I'm surprised you went with this, honestly, because I think whenever I was building my list subconsciously, I'm like, okay, this is 10th, and it can go. I don't know how you did it, and if you were like, okay, this is 9 or 10, one of these can go. But yeah, I'm okay with letting it go. I have nostalgia for it, but not as nostalgia as I do for other things.
I'm going to move the ones that we're letting go to the end so that when you reload,
and I'll refresh.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, now let's go to the beginning.
Now you should pick one of mine to kick out.
Oh, I like this.
But we'll argue over it. It doesn't mean it's definitely going.
Well, God, we can't get rid of this one. That's the cover to our collection. I want people to buy this book, Peter.
Actually, it's going to be me and Omar recreating that shot. Is going to be the cover.
Dibs on Emma. Woo.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh man. Oh, Peter. Why did you make me? Oh, we have two eras that are represented in here. It's got to be one of those. Let me go back really quick and look.
But maybe we can negotiate on those. Maybe we don't actually. Maybe we can come to a middle ground.
All right. Oh, damn it. Oh, you picked. Oh, that's a hard one to get rid of, though. Ah, man. Okay. Real talk. Okay, I'm going to go with Powers of X.
That's fair.
And it's not because of representation of this era or anything like that. I just think if I had to choose between House of X 2, which I kind of have to, and Powers of X 5, that's the one I will get rid of. Because I think everything that I want, even the shockingness, like the holy crap, I can't believe this is coming, is encompassed in this. And it also shows me what Krakoa is going to be like. So I gotta go with that one.
And you don't have to. Fair. I think I have an emotional moment in that issue, but I don't. Okay. I don't. It's not to me like The Wedding Is to You, because The Wedding Is to You then affected your real life. I think for me, I brought something from my outside life into this issue that made me really emotional. But I think that's different. It's like a different directionality. So it's not as like heartbreaking to me to lose this one.
Wes was on it. Okay.
All right. I am from yours.
Well, I didn't say it's your turn to go. Hold
Well,
on.
you just threw out Powers of X. That was your choice.
All right, what do you got? What do you got, Peter?
I was really tempted to throw away that Wolverine issue, and we might have to eventually.
I will fight. I will fight over. All right, what else? What else?
But you made a really good point. I think that if this is supposed to be us presenting what Omar and Peter love about X-Men, that you love Wolverine, and that issue is you loving Wolverine, and it's hard to argue against that. I think we have to take out. Then, if we're going to keep Wolverine, we've got to take out the Messiah complex issue, because you already have Silvestri drawing Wolverine in Wolverine, and this issue doesn't go anywhere. Like, it's basically just like, this is all going to be tragic, and then it kind of just stops. Like, I just don't, I know you enjoy it, but I just don't think it's going to be as satisfying in this 10 issues as a lot of your other choices, which are very satisfying choices.
Okay, so I was looking at my list on this other screen, and this was this was actually number 9.
Okay, so fair.
And I thought what I liked about it is introducing all these villains, and like, holy crap, people really hate the X-Men, and that's what this is about. And they want to kill as many mutants as possible. That's pure evil. But I can see your point, and then the coloring, and you know what's funny? Somebody said, "Where's this era?" This era sold so poorly for Marvel and collected editions. I didn't know that.
So crazy to me, because up until Krakoa, this was the best to me.
Yeah, nostalgia goes a long way, and it's been enough years since then. So hopefully, we'll get some collections of this in omnibus format. And by this, I mean like the Colin Yost era too of X-Force. But anyway, that's another story for another day. Okay, kill it.
Now I think we need to negotiate about 2 things where we have really similar picks. So let's go look at Astonishing X-Men.
Oh God, we're gonna go there. Okay, Astonishing happened right before this, so I picked 6. You picked 3.
I picked 3. Should we just have 4? Is there an argument that it should just be 4?
4 doesn't have. I've got 2 words for you. 4 doesn't have that moment for me. But again, this is our choice. No, Peter, because our choices were 3 and 6, so we stick to our guns. There is no middle ground when it comes to what your personal favorite is. It's what makes it yours, right? So I don't think top 10. Damn.
I mean, for me, the argument against 6 is, and which I love and has amazing panels that I have tattooed on my memory, is that it doesn't really feel like it has a big middle. Like, it starts out with this flashback scene with Dr. Rao and the guy from an Ord. Then they're arguing with Nick Fury. Like, it just feels like a lot of setup scenes up until that big conflict scene where Wolverine gets thrown at the X-Chat. And I'm not saying we can't love an issue, that this isn't about best, it's about favorite. But to me, 6 doesn't. If I was going to pick a big action issue from this run to be my representative issue, I would pick the issue where Scott has the gun and he can't use his eyesight, or I would pick the giant size, right? So I don't know if 6 is my favorite action issue from this run, and I'm open to picking a different issue of Astonishing. It does not have to be 3. I think we need an issue of Astonishing, but I also don't know if it's 6. But that's my perspective. What is your
if we're going to go with an issue of Astonishing, then Astonishing 1 is the perfect issue. It is literally coming back home with Professor Xavier's a jerk. It is the nostalgic moment. Sorry, James, I know you hate this, but it's the nostalgia of her Kitty again, looking at the mansion, having all these memories of like Pete and her flirting with each other. Panels from like Paul Smith's run. If 6 and 3 have to go, then that is my middle ground. It has to be 1. We have to astonish them.
I actually agree with you. I think, and plus number 1 has one of my favorite lines, which is, I have cloud hair. So I think I would be okay with getting rid of both 3 and 6. If we can agree on
get 1 in there. Okay. Well,
I'll finagle a way to put that into the presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Wow.
So
all right, now
so I think the other similar error we have to talk about is that we have 2 Jim Lee issues from less than a year apart.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about that. So I went with, this is going to be tough. Again, my choice is the team coming together. We hadn't seen them together for a long time. Characters within the comic thinking other characters were dead, having this wonderful reunion. Is it as big and like wonderful as 275? No, absolutely not. But holy crap, it is amazing. What's the age difference between Kitty and Peter? When she first joined the team, she was 13 and he was
18.
16, 17?
18.
He was 18. And
it's
then
problematic.
15, I think, when they started a relationship, 15. I remember her sitting down when he broke up with her. And I was around like she was 15 or so. Because I remember thinking that age, wow, when did that happen? The ball before the storm. Not a criticism in any way. I'm just surprised by the love of the Krakoa era, even though Hickman left so early in the run. Well, Hickman himself never really likes telling stories. That is something that I asked him, and he was like, I didn't want to write a monthly issue. I want to write big things, which he's doing in Imperial, by the way. And that's where it came from. And he kind of got bored. He said they pay me too much to write monthly issues.
Well, I want to linger here for a second, because I think people who are like, well, Hickman left, it doesn't count, or like it's not, why would you want to read that, are kind of like missing, or they're like putting their own thing onto that. Hickman didn't leave and then abandon his plot. Hickman left for the reason you said. He was like, I told my setup. It turned out that he thought it was going to be much shorter. He was ready to get it to Act 2. It turned out to be so popular. And he's like, Marvel doesn't pay me enough to write Act 2s for years. I've got to go write something that's going to be the top seller of the next thing. And so he wrote Infernal, and then he went and like started developing Ultimate Universe and all the other stuff, Gods, all the other things he's been doing. It's not a failure that Hickman left. All of the Hickman stuff that he was going to do continues through the end. It's Hickman being an idea guy and then stepping away. Like you got to sometimes shift that got canceled. We'll know the series ended, or like he left. We'll know he handed it off to someone else he trusted. Like sometimes we got to let go of like the clickbaity reaction to how things change and end. And just like see it for what it is. We still got Krakoa. The reason Hickman left is because it was too popular and he didn't want to end it as soon as he planned on ending it.
So we never got to see his New Mutant plans. Oh, but you remember that little thing he did with Roberto in that?
Remember the teaser cover with Roberto on the throne of the Shi'ar Empire that never happened?
You may get to see a little bit of that in Imperial. Just look to the mapping of Cosmic X-Men if you want to know a little bit about what Imperial's going to be.
I say every time we do solicits and omnibus announcements, I'm like, omnibuses are the key to guessing what's going to happen in the line.
You say that a lot, yeah.
And we got that Joe Kelly Spider-Man omnibus, and then look at that. Joe Kelly is the new writer of Amazing Spider-Man. We were all saying, why do we need a Joe Kelly omnibus? So much of this stuff is already collected. Why would you rush this omnibus? Because Joe Kelly's writing Amazing Spider-Man. Same thing, we was like, Cosmic X-Men. Why do we need this? Because Hickman's doing a cosmic event. Like, I think omnibuses that stick out like a weird thumb in the release schedule sometimes can be indicators of what characters Marvel is planning on highlighting in the next year.
So why is Hickman writing Spider-Man monthly now? Which goes with this question too. He must have changed his mind. Oh, it must be a top seller is what's happening. Like seriously, that book sells. I think. Well, did it outsell Absolute Batman? Because I've seen both. Like Absolute Batman was the #1 selling comic of the year, and then I saw that Ultimate Spider-Man was the #1 selling comic of the year. So I don't really know. I don't really know.
Well, and I also think you have to look at Hickman's always learning. He's always evolving. Every one of his runs is like a reaction to one of his past runs. And if you look at Ultimate Spider-Man, he tried to do this every issue as a one-shot thing on X-Men 2019. It didn't quite work, and it didn't read really well. And so I think that was a lot of the critique was that, oh, well, Hickman, you're just setting up stuff in X-Men and it's leading to other comic books, but the issues don't tell you, oh, you're going to need to read X-Force to understand this. You're going to need to read Excalibur. So I feel like he retooled that for Ultimate Spider-Man with this idea of every issue is going to be a month, and each issue is going to stand alone, and there's going to be no cliffhangers where you've got to read the next issue, but you're also not going to go and have to read somebody else's comic. They're each going to be their own blockbuster issue. It's almost like an ongoing series that's an event series because everything is so big and iconic in every issue, even when they're like arguing around the dinner table like they were in issue 12. And he also pretty much had the whole line structured like that. If you're reading Dennis Camp's Ultimates, which I think is probably Marvel's possibly their best book of the year, either that or Ultimate Spider-Man. Ultimates is structured the same way. So I think Hickman went away and learned from Krakoa. He learned from like, don't burn out too early. What happens if people want your big thing to keep going? How do I make it big enough that it's worth me getting paid my salary to keep making it? And I think he kind of like solved for that in Ultimate Spider-Man.
I never liked Hickman. Overrated.
I think so too, but I also think he's a genius. He's an overrated genius. Omar, I may be willing to give up X-Men #1 in favor of 272. I might be willing to.
That's your okay. Here, look, if it's our list, right? There is no denying how excited I was when this was announced. I remember clipping. I bought there was a comic that I bought just to clip the house ad for X-Men #1 when they were talking about the sales of Spider-Man. You remember that house ad? It was like Spider-Man sold this many copies, X-Force sold so many copies, and coming this summer is X-Men #1. There is no denying that I was not hyped up for this book when I was in middle school. Jim Lee was everything. I love Mark Silvestri, but even then I was like, oh my God, nobody draws like Jim Lee. And now we're getting another X-Men series with him and Chris Claremont. I didn't know he wanted Chris Claremont off the book, but that's a story for another day. But back then I was a kid. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. So I'm actually hyping your book up more than my book. I mean, Extinction Agenda means more to me. I love this crossover and I love this reunion of all these characters. But I could easily be persuaded to vote for X-Men. Actually, I may just do your work for you and just say I'm okay with X-Men 1.
And here's the choice. As much as I wanted to give you your way here, I think X-Men #1 not only has that huge nostalgia factor, which is important for the way that we're picking. It's not always what should lead us today, it is, but also it's got the new Jim Lee designs in it, which the Extinction Agenda issue doesn't. So it's kind of like, I want an issue in there that's got the DNA of the animated series, because to me that's part of my love of X-Men 2, and I feel like X-Men 1 kind of is that. So can we take out 272, even though I was willing to give it to you a minute ago? Dude, I think you talked yourself out of it.
Do it.
Okay,
let's go.
Well, we're moving right along. We're down to 14. We only need to cut.
I was ready to argue with you and tell you to go to hell and all these things, and it's going okay so far. I almost told you to go to hell when you told me to try to get rid of my Wolverine 34. That moment may still come in this stream, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, this is gonna hurt. And just because we kept the ones we kept so far doesn't mean they're safe. It doesn't mean they're like locked in.
All right, so let's go back to our two oldest picks. I picked and they don't have to be between these two. Honestly, let's just go. How about one by one? God Loves Man Kills to me is the epitome of every X-Men story. I could not put how about this? I would not put my name on a book that did not include God Loves Man Kills. Like if you forced me to take this out, I'd be like, sure, you can Alan Moore me. You can Alan Moore me, baby. You could give me my royalties and take my name off that damn book.
The original streamer.
Yeah. But I love this book. It means a lot to me. Like it's a book that has, to me, just like it hasn't like it feels like it could have been written today. Like the issues they're talking about in here. Yeah.
Can we, in good faith, take off 141? And I'm not asking
you. What the hell? We're not even talking about 141. Talking about this. What? We're gonna get rid of Days of Future Past?
Well, here's my rationale. I'm thinking about like picking this beautiful artifact up and reading our Omar and Peter's love letter to X-Men.
Okay, I'm listening.
And I feel like it starts really well if it starts with God Loves, Man Kills as a thesis statement, but it starts kind of weird if we like. Should we start with like, this is the dystopian future that the X-Men could become? Or is it actually better to start with like, this is the dystopian present that the X-Men are fighting against, you know? And I think two of them back to back, I don't know if do you need both?
If you have Days of Future Past in there and it bookends with House of X2, baby, that is a beautiful book. Like
it's got John a rhyme to
Barry Austin. And then that ending with Laraz, like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, like, yeah, now it's gonna be hard because like we're down to our real favorites, like I Will Die on This Hill kind of favorites. Oof.
Well, let me come at it from another angle. Are you thinking you're gonna argue against Uncanny X-Force, because if you take out Uncanny X-Force, I would probably take out 213. But if you leave in Uncanny X-Force in 213, I would probably take out the Affair issue. Because I feel like
those are solid choices, though.
I mean, we're down to all good choices at this point.
Oh, damn it. Okay, hold on.
Because I'm thinking of them kind of in like sets or groups, and because I took out my other Emma issue with Generation X and with Powers of X4, I just don't know if the Affair issue has a place anymore. Although the Affair issue kind of goes with the wedding issue too. I don't know. I like that there's like little pairs and groups and rhymes. Like
this happy ending, and then this chick comes around. It's like, wait a second. Woo! Oh man, I almost want to. Okay, we've removed everything from here. Uncanny X-Force. Oh shoot. Because this isn't the Wolverine show either. And not that our picks have been, with the exception of Wolverine 34. I actually, I hate that you picked this. Like, this is such a bad choice. But listen.
You think this is a bad choice?
This is a bad choice. Yes, I don't think.
Omar.
Oh no, Peter, this isn't good. Excalibur, like Excalibur got good later on. I would like when Alan Davis came back to the book, I would have given you that. But listen, it's not about me. It's about the fun that it brought you. So that's all that matters. So
here's what I'm saying. If it's a book about how much we love X-Men, there has to be an Alan Davis issue. So if we take this out, I am not taking out 213.
Yeah, no, this stays in. I'm good with this.
Well, then we could lose 213.
Mother of God, that's such a good issue. Shit. This is hard. Okay.
And it's really hard. We only have to cut 4, Omar. We're so close.
I think this stays. Because it means a lot to you. And because it represents an era of the book that people are like, this is so different than everything else in this book that I'm reading. Like, because it is about the fun of X-Men, right? It is, comics are also about having fun. Not everything has to be deep and cryptic like House of X2. I'm okay with this one staying. Yeah, that's a good choice. It's a good choice. I don't like it, but it's a good choice. Oh man.
Do we have to take off that New Mutants issue? We might have to take off New Mutants.
No, but that is a good issue, dude. Quit doing this to me.
I'm trying to be magnanimous and take off mine.
Book. Why am I fighting for your stupid books? Okay, no. You know what? No, Peter. Okay, I hate to say this, but I think Rogue's got to go.
Yeah, I was thinking it's Rogue. It's why
I love From the Ashes. It's a beautiful. It's like some of my early comics, but we're looking at the top 10, right? And we don't even have a welcome to the X-Men blank. Hope you survive the experience, which we almost need to for the cover.
So you're saying you want to keep it or get rid of it?
No, I'm saying we need to get rid of it.
Yeah, I'm thinking we need to get rid of it from the perspective of it's too. This is X-Men greatest hitsy. It's too giant size X-Men. Like, it's not. But even though I love Rogue and she's important to me, I just don't know if this like stands alone as an emotional issue for me the way the other ones do.
But at the end of the day, it is, it's your love of these things, this nostalgia. I like this issue a lot. I love the first person perspective. Walter Simonson drawing Carol as she's coming in.
It also rhymes really well with God Loves Man Kills, because we come right off of God Loves Man Kills with them being like, we reject hatred, and then they have this mutant coming to them to be like, take me into the fold, and they're like, do we love enough to accept somebody who did bad things to us into our group? Like,
and that's what X-Men is, right? Like, I think it's so good. And it's Nick is right. It's the first time Ileana draws her soul sword in front of Kitty. A lot of good ones.
But then what if we leave this one and do we take out New Mutants and then we have no Sinkovich? I think we got to take out your Wolverine issue, Omar.
No. We're not taking out the Wolverine. The Wolverine issue is solid. You made me remove goddamn Messiah Complex because you were like, but you already got it in Mark Silvestri.
That's true. That's true.
How dare you?
Part of my Part of my negotiation was that you already had Mark Silvestri.
You
That
might
is
have thought I'm
accurate.
playing checkers while you're playing chess, but I've been playing 2 hands of Chinese checkers the entire time. I don't even know if that's still a game, if that's still what they call it.
What if we took out the wedding and the affair?
No! Oh, son of a bitch. This is hard. Okay.
We got to take out 4 more issues, Omar.
I know. Hold on a second.
I've now volunteered everything.
I love that you volunteer all your stupid books, and reverse psychology might be working on me. Okay. Are we okay with removing Uncanny 171?
Oh, I just think it goes with God Loves so good.
It does, which is why we need God Loves. I love Rogue. She's my favorite X-Men, but do we need it?
Yeah, I guess we can take it off.
Take it off?
It's killing me.
I know. It's what I do, Peter.
Hurt me?
Yes. You're a glutton for punishment because you keep coming.
All right, we still got to lose 3 more.
Okay. Let me look at this list again. Do we still have 213?
Yes.
And did we lose Extinction Agenda?
Yeah, why don't you hit reload? Because I've moved the ones to the back.
Let me move this really quick and hit reload over here. Thank you all so much for being a part of this stream. Don't forget to hit that like button. And I am going to let the chat vote for one of the choices here in a second, because I feel like we need to get the chat involved. Why is Wolverine on there?
Exactly, because it's Silvestri.
I don't understand
Omar
that question.
Wanted is Silvestri.
Okay, easy. Don't point the finger at me. All right, back to this. This is what we got so far. All right, I fought for Uncanny 141. You're welcome, you old dudes that have to go to bed here in an hour or two. It's what I do. I love this book. God Loves, Man Kills. Also old people book. But hey, here we are. Now, New Mutants 21 is still there. Uncanny 213. Excalibur, Wolverine. X-Factor. We haven't even talked about X-Factor. New. Oh. Yes. Good job, Peter. Putting in Astonishing. Uncanny X-Force. House of X. All right.
That's a good list. It's a very good list. It's just 3 books too long.
3 books too long? Okay. Holy mother of God. I can't believe I'm going to say this. No. I can't. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to remove 141. That's ridiculous. Like, I would get crucified by a bunch of old nerds if I took out 141. How dare I not have the John Byrne representation? So my next vote to go has to be Uncanny X-Force.
Oh, but then we lose like cool modern issues. It's like one of the biggest fight issues. It's like emotional. It has everything. It's probably one of the best art issues. It's
dude.
I hear you. I understand why. I know it's not out of malice. I get that it's like the odd duck, but that's why I love it.
That's where Rick Remender's Uncanny X-Force peaked, was the Dark Angel saga. I'm with you. Damn it.
No, I hear you. I think you might be right.
Don't give up. Don't give up on me that easy. Let's go back.
But then we jump all the way from 2004 all the way to 2019 with like no indication of what I think.
Maybe we just didn't have any good X-Men comics then, because we're old and we didn't think that.
I'm telling you, I think we take out the Psychic Affair issue. I don't think we have an emotional connection to it. I think it's just there because we think it's fun. Yeah.
You're not even gonna fight for it.
I don't feel like we have a connection to that the way we do to all the other issues on the list.
I'm going to ask the chat if we should remove Uncanny X-Force 18 before you remove one of yours.
No, ask them if we should take out 18 or the Affair. We're only keeping one of those 2.
Wow.
Those are my next 2 that I'm
yours. Okay,
I'll ask. I don't know. I can't. Solomon's got to cut the baby in half for me. I don't know what to do.
So I'm going to start a poll. You all get to vote for the one that's... Should I make it for the one that stays or the one that goes?
Let them be mean-spirited. Have them vote for the one that goes.
Which book goes? All right, everybody, get ready to get on your computer or your phones or whatever and vote. New X-Men. 139, and it's Uncanny X-Force 18?
18.
All right, so everybody that's still in the chat right now, everybody that's watching right now, you can vote. You can vote for your phones. Which one goes? Good luck. We can
Omar,
vote too, Peter. We can vote too, Peter.
We need to have a serious conversation, Omar, about X Factor 87.
If we're keeping stupid ass Excalibur 1 and I can't get my real good issue, probably an award-winning issue of X Factor 87, you go to hell. There, I said it. I hadn't said it the entire screen. You go to hell, sir. All right, everybody, go and vote. Which one goes? Which one stays? They're both Peter's choices, which I love.
Which is why you're about to do a similar Sophie's Choice with two of yours. So get to picking, Omar.
I didn't agree to that. Take out the affair. Wow. Well, go and vote. Make sure you're voting. We got over 157 people watching and only 44 votes so far. So I'm going to leave it up for another minute while Peter and I discuss something.
Oh, but then, I mean, I keep talking about pairs of issues. I think the X Factor issue goes really well with the affair issue because it's like both about like peeling back layers, uncovering the core. I think we found a lot of really good, even when we had them on our separate lists from each other, we found issues that paired together really well.
Yeah. Which I think, you know, the whole 141 and what's it called? The House of X2 go hand in hand. I agree with that. Keep your damn filthy paws off my X Factor 87, Peter. I like that. That should be a t-shirt. If you're, especially for shopping.
I really think this is going to turn into me taking off 2 and you taking off 1 to get down to 10. I do think that's what's going to have to happen.
Oh no, don't say that.
Well, you can't not give up any. You can't make me give up 3 more.
I'm gonna make you choose all 3 of your choices and keep all of mine. That's how I manipulate people.
Right. Because actually, right now you have 6 and I have 7. So Astonishing kind of belongs to both of us. So we both have 6, and then there's Astonishing.
Fine. All
so
right, where we
right now?
Has everybody that wanted to vote voted? Has everybody that wanted to vote? We got how many votes do we have in so far? I need to make sure everybody gets a vote.
Unless over 50 to be valid.
Unless you're watching this later, then by all means, I'm sorry, you can't vote. Yeah, we got over 50 votes, so I'm ending the poll right now. Drum roll, please.
I don't even want to see.
Oh, Peter. All of Peter's choices, all the above need to go. It's what the poll stops kidding. It is Uncanny X-Force by 61%. 60 votes. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys.
I love it.
That's what happens when you have a democracy, right? Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes they make bad choices. Okay.
I love
so now your turn, Omar. We're at 12, and you've got to cut one.
All right.
That doesn't belong to me.
I was going to put 2 of yours up again. I can't do this, Peter.
Omar, we all know it's Wolverine.
All my choices are so good, dude. All right. Wolverine.
Or the wedding. The wedding is not.
The wedding Melanie would leave me if I take out the wedding.
Well, you're in a tight spot then, my friend. You're in a very tight spot.
I'll tell her it's your fault. Oh my God, I can't believe Wolverine 30. Why are you making me do this? All right. The chat.
Well, is there any other choice? I mean, you're so adamant that we need 141 and God Loves Man Kills.
I'm sorry you feel like that's too old for you. Doesn't have the pretty colors like Messiah Complex. Oh my God.
I don't like the colors of Messiah Complex. Are you talking to me?
Oh, I was being facetious. All right. Wolverine 34. I can't believe I'm typing those words. How the hell did this happen?
I don't know.
Yeah, Bloss, thank you. I'll give up Wolverine for Melanie. That's how I'll see this. Okay.
That's right. It's to save your marriage, Omar.
I'm going to put Wolverine 34 up against New X-Men 139.
No, that's one of mine.
I know. I'm just an asshole. Fine, I'll put it up against X Factor 87. Although you people may surprise me and Wolverine might come on. Oh, I can't do that. Oh, you bastards. All right, fine. I'm going to put it up against Uncanny 141.
No! Okay, fine.
Do you really think people are going to vote for Wolverine 34 over Uncanny 140? No. So which one goes? You all decide, people that are watching. Buy Wolvie. Somebody just wrote buy Wolvie. Give up Wolverine for Melody. It's what I do, man. It's what I do.
But we could do a whole other Wolverine, stream. We could do all Wolverine.
Yeah, we can. This is an all geezer. Shut up, Brian Wilson. I plead the.
And you couldn't possibly do the show with 3 people because then it's 30 books and it turns into it all day.
That's a nightmare.
It's always got to be one-on-one.
But it's got to be people that are passionate too, right? Like not everybody's as passionate. Like I can see Jess being like, I don't care, whatever. You could take my book off of all the list. That's fine.
I think it would be fun if you continued to do this, and not always necessarily with me, and just whatever the thing is that you love, you try to think of the person who is as obsessed with it as you. Like, I don't know if I love Wolverine enough to like passionately argue for Wolverine against you. I think I would let you win. So you'd have to find somebody else that's as obsessed with Wolverine as you, or like Spider-Man. Like I'm not originally Omar and I talked about having this be all of Marvel. And I was like, Omar, I'm just not going to care. Like I'm never going to let anybody pick a Spider-Man issue over an X-Men issue. So it's not fair. So that's why we wound up doing X-Men. But you could have a lot of fun with somebody who's like obsessed with Spider-Man, and I could be eating popcorn in the comments,
Jess would fight for new X-Men. Riley would be fun because Riley is also he's a little younger than we are, about 10 years or so younger. So
Riley is not 10 years younger than me. You shut your mouth.
Oh, I think he is.
No,
he's of the Pokemon generation.
Oh my gosh.
I was out of high school when Pokemon came out, so I'm not
taking psychic damage right now, Omar.
Well, your knees and elbows, when they start hurting at the age of 40 plus, you just can't help it. All you got is just comics and arguing about comics.
Right.
Logan,
after being on a stream now, you got to lay down with the foam roller, and after sitting in the chair for 3 hours and like correct all the mistakes. That's how I know I'm getting old. I need recovery from streaming.
Especially with me. Isn't Peter of the Pokemon generation? Well, he might be.
I want to say that I was drunk when Pokemon was coming out, but I'd have to check my years on that.
Pokemon came out in 1997, 1998 in America.
I may have been drunk.
All right, we have more than 50 votes. Apparently, they're calling it.
No, there's no more counties that we want to wait to count before it gets in. We have enough of a count to call it, CNN.
I mean, unless Larry Hama brings in his people, it ain't happening. All right, I'm ending the poll. And the poll, the results of the poll are both of the choices get to stay in. Kick off the X-Men. No, Wolverine 34 goes. 75% of the votes went towards you monsters. But I guess when you put Burnt, I didn't get a Sylvester in this collection. What the fuck?
Who's playing chess now, Omar?
You bastard. You played me. All right, what's left? How many more do we need to kick out?
One, and I have a sad feeling that it's Excalibur, unless because I got 2 Davis issues, and I don't need 2. And I do actually agree that later Excalibur is better. I should have just went with my heart and picked 61. So, and this is an X-Men book, and Excalibur is right now the thing that's farthest off to the side of it being an X-Men book. So I think with peace and gratitude, I can remove Excalibur.
Wow. Really? I almost want to fight you for that. No, I don't think you should remove Excalibur.
Well, what are you going to take off instead of Excalibur? We're down to like verified bangers at this point.
Dude, I love that we go from this.
Yeah, maybe.
Somebody's going to be reading that for the first time going, "Aw, they have a beautiful, happy ending. Who's this bitch?"
Oh, it's so great. I think it's going to be so funny. Like that's what you have the opportunity to do in a book like this, right? It's just you know why it's got to be Excalibur, y'all, because I refuse.
How many of my choices came in compared to yours? Let's do that right now.
I think we both have the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from you and 4 from me, but then Astonishing, which is kind of both. So if we take out Excalibur, because here's the thing, I refuse to take out 213. I just refuse.
Well, then,
and because it's Davis, and I think it would be dumb to take out New Mutants because it's just Sienkiewicz and Claremont is such an iconic combo, and it's got Warlock and it's got like Ileana with the sword. I just think it has so much DNA in it And I know that I have to cut at this point either 213, New Mutants, or Excalibur. So I think Excalibur is the easiest one to cut. But that's where I am personally. What do you think, Omar? The chat all of a sudden is showing up for Excalibur, by the way. Well, after dogging me for it for an hour.
No, because you showed so much passion and love for that. I don't want to take that from you, because I think that's what makes this a beautiful collection. It's hard choices. Is it an awful choice? Yes, absolutely. It's an awful choice. Okay.
Am I being too precious?
I think, you know, honestly. Damn it. Okay. I think, honestly, Uncanny might have to go. And I love this issue.
And we're going to keep Excalibur? I mean,
I think I would rather get rid of Uncanny 213 than take away your Excalibur 1. But we honestly, we can put Uncanny 213 up against Excalibur 1, but I was willing to put X Factor 87 against Excalibur 1 or against Uncanny 213.
No, that's that's scary.
I'm curious what I mean, if this is a true democracy and we'll let the people in the chat watching this live vote right now. I'm curious because it could go either way. There are people that have no idea what X Factor 87 is, and I don't know if I sold it well. And there are people that, you know, are Peter David fans.
But here's the thing. I think X Factor 87, now that we're getting tight, I think it represents something we don't have, which is like an X-Men issue that's all about
take out God loves man kills coming from. We're not talking about that anymore. We moved on.
I think X Factor is an issue about like the interiority of X-Men, and we hadn't had any of that up to that point. We have a lot of big, loud issues now up to that point. So I think it kind of cools things down a little. And then we have the wedding and the affair. So we kind of have like a kind of interpersonal little group of issues in the middle. And then we kind of like escalate again because we have Astonishing and House. And I'm starting to think about like, let's think about if we had to like sell this book to somebody and like, why is it going to be fun to read these 10 issues in this order? I actually think that X Factor into wedding, into affair, into Astonishing 3, into Mora is actually the back half of this book is tight. I'm really happy with it right now. Uncanny X-Force kind of stuck out weirdly in that group, and now it's gone. So although it does connect to Mora in life number 7 or 8, but whatever. That we already kicked it out. So you would take out 213. I will agree that 213 feels kind of small as a story compared to some of these other stories.
It's got a great fight though. It's got that great island.
Got a great fight.
Okay.
Mutant Massacre is important. Mutant Massacre is a big deal.
I'm gonna now that we've said our piece, I'm gonna let the chat vote which one gets taken out. Uncanny 213, Excalibur 1.
Okay.
And
I'll even both agree.
I'll even put X Factor 87 in there.
No. We need X Factor 87.
Okay.
Don't put it.
Fair enough. All right. You all get to decide which one gets to get Kiz. Yeah. I'm curious where this is going. Now, this is I kind of knew where the Wolverine one would have ended up. Because these people are bastards. Which one goes?
Two of my 3 favorite Alan Davis art issues of all time. The third one being Excalibur 61. I'm leaving it in your hands, chat. I'm trusting you to make the right choice because I can't decide.
And I was willing to remove both of those to bring back my Wolverine 34. All right. I just started the poll, so please, if you have a phone, go and vote. Which one goes? Uncanny 213 or Excalibur Special? Go and vote. Refresh that thing. I always vote against Omar's interest. I hate you, Ryan. I'm gonna put your
Nick just said something great. Nick really has a really
Excalibur embodies the importance of the dream continuing on, even though it's beautiful because that's why I wanted to keep it in. And you were like,
well, it's out of your hands now, Omar.
You fought against me keeping it in. It's what happens. Just got out of work and you are still going. Of course, we're still going. We're talking about X-Men. So people doers, hey, good guys in the chat. Everyone have a spectacular day. I love that the polls aren't landslides. It's pretty good. All right, we need more than. Let's go all the way to 60 votes. We'll go all the way to 60 votes. We got over 100.
Oh, that's killing me. Killing me.
No, that's not how you vote. You go vote. You click on the freaking thing. It's a Pete can go vote too if he wants to. And
but we can agree, if we
get...
were making a Wolverine book, you would pick this.
Here is, thank you so much, Silhouette Animator, for the super chat. Here's where I'd keep my Phalanx Omni if I had one. Oh man, Peter, we need a we have been requested to also talk about this new mapping with X-Men Blue and Gold.
Oh, I have opinions,
and I do. I think we should make a stream about that, you know, because things are changing, that's for sure, and what people should do. I voted for that on the poll. Okay, the best Sabretooth versus Wolverine cover. This screams. It's personal. Oh, that's a good cover. It's great. These books are all way too good for these landslots. True. Where are we at on the votes here? How many votes we got? How many votes we got? 54. But we got. I'll leave it up for another minute. Oh, yeah, this is close, Peter. This is close, my friend.
I don't want to look. I haven't voted because I don't want to see the standings.
Yeah, the best Sabretooth versus Wolverine cover. I agree.
True.
And thank you so much, Nick, for the super chat. I love this so much. Thank you both for this. Oh, thank you. I couldn't have sent off this year without doing a live stream with Peter one time in December. And I was like, ooh, what else should we do? Let's argue over something. How about X-Men?
And you were really working on me. I think you first pitched this in November. I'm like, I don't know. Does anybody care about our 10 favorite stories? But Omar wore me down.
I did. I was like, come on, let's do it. And recount of Excalibur goes. I agree. Thank you, Omar, from someone who missed out on that Lee Claremont Omnis. Yeah, we need to. Because I do want to talk to Peter about that, and maybe we'll have the same thing we did with the Mutant Massacre. That ridiculous.
Right, one of my famous
Peter put together. That thing is a beast, man. Omar, what videos are out tomorrow, if any? Tomorrow is the Decimation overview, and it's a very personal one. It's my top 10 reads of the year.
Ooh,
top 10.
I'm working on mine right now too.
Every year that I do that, I always talk about the people that have passed too, like the creators or people that have been involved in the comic industry that have passed, and it's sad. Like, and it's one of those things that I make a hard cut. I'm like, oh, and by the way, like, you know, you go from like somber to like, and here's all the cool reads I got to read this year. Omar, please don't ruin Blue and Gold Omni and make it to volumes. I'll be Pete. Dude, I'm not saying anything, man. Once again, Dark Phoenix issues won't make the list. I like this, and I love the hater energy, Peter.
Me? Who's the hater? No. Hold on, Jean-Remy. Let's talk about who's the hater on this one, because it is not this beautiful face today, folks. I am not hating.
You made me give it my Wolverine 34. I can't believe it happened, man. What the hell did that happen?
Oh, there it is.
All right, we need one more vote, and then Excalibur can go. And that's it.
Gosh. Okay.
It was, Peter, I'll be honest, it was very close. 55% Excalibur
to go. Well, that's fair. I possibly because I influenced the jury by saying I was willing to give it up.
Yeah, you shouldn't have done that.
But here's the thing. If you watch the stream, now you know. Like, if you want to get to know us and read 10 X-Men comics to get to know each of us, this is kind of our holy grail of Omar's X-Men fandom and Crisis's X-Men fandom. And this book that we have, when you reload it, kind of represents like what you and I agree makes us excited about X-Men, which I think is really fun. I would be very proud to have my name on this. I'm going to I'll make a list on Crushing Crisis as a post that has links to all of them on Uncanny or on Marvel Unlimited. So you could just go down and read all 10 of them in order. And
I am going to share our final 10.
Here we go.
All right. Hey, here we go. It's like you're reading a book here. I'm going to remove Peter and I for a second. So that is our cover right there. I'm happy to put my name on it. I don't mind now at all. And the first book is Uncanny X-Men 141. That's how you kick it off. You kick it off strong like that. Then God Loves, Man Kills. Oh man, you bring in the feels and the power behind X-Men in this one. And then New Mutants 21, the Slumber Party. Bring in that Magnum PI mustache. Love it. Uncanny X-Men 213, the last part of the Mutant Massacre. brutal face or showdown between Sabretooth and Wolvie plus Psylocke. Oh. And then we go all the way to X-Men #1, best-selling comic book of all time. I can't believe we put it on our list, but that's okay. We needed something Jim Lee, and I'm good with this one. This is a great choice. X-Factor 87. I don't think it's as underrated as it once was. I don't know. It still could be. But, man, what a powerful and just beautiful comic. Yes, my wedding vows stay. I'll tell Melanie our book remains on this collection, so I don't have to get divorced again. And new X-Men 139. I'm honestly surprised this one stayed.
I can't, but I kind of am shocked.
I did not.
I feel a little dirty.
I was going to boot this one off. Like, it's... How did you sneak this past me and took away my Wolvie 34, you bastard? All right, yeah. Yay, affairs. Okay. But look at that cover. That will be the new cover, by the way. I choose that as the cover. Astonishing X-Men 1. Neither one of us picked this one, but
sometimes you got to compromise. Sometimes you need a compromise pick,
and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
House of X #2, which to me is what makes the modern era X-Men so great. Complexity, respecting the past, and giving you something else to work on. Oh, man. And that is our list of the top 10, or our top 10, rather, X-Men comics that we would put in a collection. Would I buy this book? Only if I found it at Ollie's. Are you guys still here? I went to the gym to jog and then back. Of course we're still here. We were waiting for you to get back. Omar, another Phoenix book. Took your pick on what? No, shut up. Was it?
Well, because,
Mother,
because
I didn't even notice them. I was busy looking at Emma. You bastard, you distracted me. I didn't even see her freaking Dark Phoenix outfit. Omar, I'm thinking about getting the Battle for the Cow complete. I just got it in. How was that? It was okay. It was okay. I just got it in, actually.
it's like a little up and down. If you're talking about the story rather than the physical build, it's like a little up and down. It's not like the best Bat story ever. No. There's a reason that they skip it in all of the collections up until this point, but there's some good issues in there. Yeah.
And it's fully complete, including some things that have never been collected in trade paperback. Those votes could have went the other way, and it still would have been a legitimate list. I agree. I think we curated a really good list. I am curious, like, if Don would be interested to doing something like this with somebody, somebody more like that has had his reading experience. Of like, hey, I've only been reading X-Men for like 4 or 5 years, and these are the books I like. Because I'm curious what they think, what makes it so special, right? Because I know that Dom really likes a lot of the stuff from the past, except for Wolverine for some reason.
I know. It would be a great pairing if we could actually.
What?
Played you.
Dom versus. There we go.
Dom and Oddfell would be a good one because there are people who came to X-Men a little bit more recently, and Oddfell just her taste is so fun, and I love hearing like why she likes the issues that she likes. So Dom and Oddfell, I think would be I would be tuned in. It would be so fun. This
is the comment I needed to hear today. Lars could do the top 10 Legion comics with himself. Only one John Byrne. Oh, Joe, kill. 60 years of X-Men. John Byrne. How many years did he draw? He drew what, 4 years? No Alpha Flight. Almost included Alpha Flight Snowblind just to piss people off.
I will say this, with the exception of God Loves Man Kills, which is nothing against Brent Anderson, just hear me out. We kind of did wind up picking a list of 10 very iconic artists.
Oh yeah. And I think we almost had to, right?
Like there's no issue on here other than Brent Anderson, who's not really a known name to X-Men fans. There's not really an issue here that's not by like a Killer's Row kind of X-Men artist with what we wound up with. The artist lineup here is Byrne, Brett Anderson, Sienkiewicz, Davis, Lee, Quesada, Kubert, Jimenez, Cassidy, Larraz. Like that's intense.
Where's Mark Silvestri on that?
I don't know. Did we not pick a Mark? So
did
somebody insist on having God Loves Man Kills instead of picking a good Silvestri issue?
you played me again. I don't know how to word this so it doesn't take up multiple posts, but do you guys think that Hickman makes it too difficult for the writers that follow him? Does he kind of break characters because he has these massive ideas and plots that writers who come after him struggle to do anything big or exciting, as he's already done the biggest thing like Avengers FF Secret Wars? He definitely has a style of writing, right? It's like you, especially if you read his indie stuff, it's very similar to the style that he brings in the comics, which is he knows what's going on, and you need to catch up, because if you don't know what's going on, then you're not doing enough work. And it's not until you hit that like halfway point, you're like, oh, that's what's going on. And Hickman's over here with the end game going, dude, where you been? I feel like other writers that do that are kind of like, for some reason, labeled pretentious, because they're not all pretentious. Like I think Gillen does a good job of doing something very, very similar to that, especially if you read his Gillen's X-Men stuff. Cy Spurrier. Cy Spurrier is another writer that's very, oh my gosh, this is so confusing. What the hell's going on? And Cy Spurrier's like, what the hell do you mean? How do you not know what's going on? You can't figure this out? I thought you read comics.
Me. That's me.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I feel like some writers come with that kind of writing style. You know, we're missing Quietly. Oh,
I want to
I have talked about my hate of Quietly. I love Quietly's We 3. I think it's beautiful. But the way I describe Quietly drawing women is like everybody looks like a ugly bald woman with a bad wig on. That's the way I see Frank Quietly's. They're not very pretty.
Who's the hater now?
I am the hater. You can label me as a hater.
So here's the thing, Hickman. You know, I have a hate relationship with Hickman, because I sometimes think the concepts win over characters, but I think you have to look at how people pick up runs and what they do. And a lot of writers pick up a run and they want to pivot so hard to the perpendicular direction of what the past writer did, that after, when people pick up from Hickman, they're like, well, I've got to go really little, or I've got to go really personal, or I've got to go nostalgic, since Hickman went big brain. And I think the reason it's hard is because those are the people that they pick to go after Hickman, right? Like, you know, if you look at who tends to follow him, nobody really does anything super, super revolutionary. They kind of try to pivot to something smaller. And I think that it takes like a Ewing or a Gillen, or like somebody who's like a little bit, who's going to go just as hard. I mean, Ewing, I think, is really notable for, you know, picking up Venom and like it or dislike Kate's Venom and like or dislike Ewing's Venom. Ewing was like, oh, you think Kate's mic dropped on Venom? I'm going to mic drop from higher up and a bigger microphone and even harder. You could like it or hate it, but Ewing went bigger. And I think Ewing did the same thing on Thor. Thor had a few really good years, was coming off again of Kate's, a really good run. And Ewing's like, what if we just go big? And I think, you know, Gillen picking up from JMS on Thor back in 2007, 2008, people was like, what if I just like lean harder into what JMS was doing instead of kind of pivoting? And I'm just waiting for somebody finally to like pick up from Hickman and instead of like stopping the momentum of the snowball, actually being like, what if the momentum just kept going? But Hickman's also a very giving collaborator, and that he tends to put the toys in the toy box really well. Krakoa is built from that concept. Everybody was going to be alive at the end. He wasn't going to break everything. Avengers, he gave them a reset button. Like he's very giving in that sense. So a lot of times writers don't have to deal with what Hickman left behind, because Hickman gives them an out. And I guess I'm just waiting for somebody to not take the out. I want somebody to be like, no, make it hard. Leave it a wreck. Do like the Bendis to Brubaker Daredevil handoff, where like Bendis was like, and he's in jail. So there. You know, like that. I think somebody should pick up from Hickman in that way, you know?
Oh, man, that would be so. And I think that's what writers like to do with the character of Daredevil, now that you mentioned Daredevil. And thank you so much, James. Hopefully Marvel or Folio catches sight of something like this to give Omar an official top 10 book release. I'd be down to per. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. Omar and Peter, Xavier started with his original 5 X-Men. Who would your... Oh, like that have existed over this whole time, like ever since X-Men 1? Oh my god, there's so many mutants and only 5. Wait, are we both picking our own 5?
Or do we have to do this? Is it this show? Are we to...
Because I feel like Dazzler somehow is gonna fucking end up joining the team.
No, she doesn't. She doesn't need to be in the 5. I think. Yeah.
Wolverine and Storm are 2 right off the bat for me. Like that's Surge. You like Surge?
Oh, Omar, you're in for a very sad read in one of the coming months of trades. Let me tell you.
Oh God, of course.
I got upset. Anyway, spoilers. Yeah, I would be tempted with Surge on, because I think whenever you build the 5 X-Men, you got to look. Even if we say the original 5 are boring and like they don't go together, or whatever, you got to. You're playing with archetypes, right? You need like you kind of need the young kid one. You kind of need the one whose powers aren't super in control. You kind of need the one who feels like they don't really go with the group in some way, which you could almost pick several of them. You need the kind of leader, but sometimes the leader doesn't have to be a stick in the mud. Sometimes the leader can be somebody who's like chomping at the bit to lead. But you got to play this archetype game when you make a team that's only between 4 and 6 characters. You can't just kitchen sink it, and you can't put everybody who's the same. Like, would I love to put like Wolverine and Lara on the same team? Yeah, but not only are they 2 Wolverines, but they play a really similar archetype, and then you just wind up with an X-Force book, right? So I think, Surge works. And the reason I think Omar and I would both pick Surge is she never had great control over her powers. She doesn't like being part of the group. She's a little bit of a hothead. But then if we pick Surge, we probably can't pick my boy Hellion because they fill, or Choir, because they kind of all fill that spot. So it's kind of about when you're picking a team and you see the new writers struggling with this. And I think one of the problems with this new era, having totally caught up with it and really not liking it very much, is the writers picked the wrong casts. Like nobody built in that internal tension to their cast. And so all of the cast books are kind of flopping a little bit. And then all the solo books are really fun because they're like deep diving into characters that usually get stuck in cast. Jean has a solo book. Storm has a solo book. Lara's back with a solo book. Psylocke has a solo book. So that's really exciting. And the cast books are like, well, in a book of like Wolverine, Rogue, Nightcrawler, Jubilee, and Gambit, like they're all classic characters. There's nobody to be like the odd one out there, So I think you need levels when you pick a team. So if we're going to pick Surge, now we have to pick somebody totally reliable and dependable to like balance Surge, right? And then we need a heavy.
Long shot.
Oh, and for what? Just
I love long shot. That's why. This would be really fun to get a few of us together to pick. Like if we were giving the task of picking the next X-Men team. Kind of like a Hellfire Gala. It's almost like a choice.
And then they're going to kill them all.
The next 10 X-Men. I think it would be fun to do this.
I would probably pick Magic. I would probably pick Nightcrawler.
It just seems to be a very popular choice these days.
I think
it's hard for me not to pick like a Gen X kid, like Jono again, like a Chamber, because I don't think they were given the spotlight that they needed. Like, and then
I think Duggan, for all the criticisms of Duggan as an X-Men writer, he cast the team really well. Duggan understood that, and he understood who to like move out of the team when he was kind of done with them and who to bring in to kind of keep, even when he brought Firestar in, when everybody was like Firestar and an X-Men team, like it just kept things moving. And he was really good at like having somebody move out, then he brought in Kamala Khan as Miss Marvel on the team. Like, I think you got to do that. You're always got to be thinking about who's the 5, what's the mix, what are the archetypes? Yeah, but then you just said something else that made me think. Oh, I lost it.
Blink. I would add Blink. Age of Apocalypse. Blink.
Good one.
Hasn't been.
Magic. Sure. I think with Magic, Marvel has for like 10 years now kind of ignored, like, she's just ready to break out. People, they did one What If issue for her. So like, did they really test the waters with the sales? I don't know if they have enough data. I hope this new solo series for her sells really well. Her statues sell well. People seem to really dig when she's in video games. They dig her skins on things. They dig her alternate covers. Like, I really think they have to experiment and see if the sales are there. The way they have with X-23, they know they can sell X-23 books at this point, especially with how much people liked her in Deadpool and Wolverine. At this point, Lara has been minted as like, she'll at least sell a miniseries. We can always keep putting her on the schedule. And I'd really like to see that be true for Magic, but they gotta be bold and test the waters. So I hope you all go out and buy this new Magic series. That's how we're going to prove to them that we want more.
I think honestly, who we have to thank for that is Brian Michael Bendis. She was in that Colin Yost new X-Men Childhood End, and then he was like, yeah, I think it's time to put her on a team. She has a cool costume, and it's that Bachalo costume, right?
Well, it started
That
with
she still
Zeb
uses.
Wells. Let's give Zeb Wells some credit for basically.
Well, okay, so she
Yeah.
came back in New X-Men, and then she was in the New Mutant Zeb Wells series. But it was the redesign of that costume and then putting her on the X-Men team that really like were like, oh, who's Magic? And a lot of people came, to find X-Men because of Bendis's run, despite of how some people, including someone in this very chat, feels about that era of Ben. Oh, of course, Warren. It's the best ever. Of course, yes. You cannot pay me to read from the Ashes book. It's got some unimaginative blandness in other stinker areas like blue, gold, red, IVX of the late 90s and 12 Revolution. If it's just favorite. Oh, Archangel. I would put Archangel on team. I love that character.
Chamber. I love Chamber. I love
Surge,
Chamber.
Wolverine and Storm. Yeah, it's at 5. But it would be fun to bring everybody else in and see what they think. So that's it, everybody. That was the last live stream of the year. That's it. No mas. I'll be back Thursday, I think, with the Marvel Solicits. Got to tweak it a little bit because I haven't announced some of the masterworks that are in there. So we will see. But I do want to thank my wonderful co-host for joining me, for just being a wonderful, wonderful human being and a great friend, and also somebody that I love talking comics to, even though, we don't have to agree on everything, which we usually don't agree on a lot of things. And that's the beauty of comics, right? I like listening to other people's opinions and hearing their perspective on things, which is why I love talking to Peter. Because as I'm listening, I'm just thinking to myself, oh my God, he's a freaking idiot. Like, what is he talking about? I could just compliment you the whole time.
It was getting too sweet. It was getting too nice.
It was too much. Too much. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Peter, tell people where they can find you, my buddy.
Well, y'all, when I am not making my periodic appearances on this stream, I am working so hard at crushingcrisis.com. That's Crisis with a K, which is my name throughout the comic-loving internet. And there's guides to over 150 Marvel characters, teams, and titles on there. And the thing is, with guides, you got to keep them up, or else it just becomes like this artifact of what comics looked like 2, 3, 5 years ago. Even in the course of a couple months, things change so big. So if you go to any Marvel guide right now, they are fully updated to the present day. They have all of the collections, all the character appearances, everything that's happening with teams, even some newly announced books. There's a From the Ashes page for X-Men. There's everything you need to follow whatever your favorite Marvel character or title is. And I'm going through that same update process on DC and indie books right now. I just updated my Spawn guide over the weekend. If I can go off script for a second, I don't think I've ever seen a character launch so many classic collections and so many new series at one time as Spawn is right now, other than like X-Men or Spider-Man. They're reprinting so much cool stuff. They're doing a Violator collection, the original Alan Moore Violator miniseries, never been collected. They're putting all of Spawn manga in the same collection, never happened before. Anyway.
Can I stop you for 1 second? And this is funny because when I interviewed him, as soon as we were done talking, I was like, when are we going to get these collections back in print? People are wanting him. The way that he told me, he was like so defeated, and he was like, I don't know if those things sell. And I'm like, they do. And it's been enough time that you can reprint them. And it's like he wasn't sure of himself. And I said, did you see how well your Kickstarter went for that Spawn toy? Like within a day? Had like over $1 million. I think you're gonna be okay. And he was such a cool guy, like to talk to, just about like collected editions. He had no idea that there was a demand for collected editions. So hopefully they'll reprint all of those.
Well, once again, Omar has had whispered in the ear of the people in power and had an influence, because Spawn's about to have a really cool year. But anyway, totally off topic.
There's a lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say it's my great joy to be a part of this family and to call Omar my very good friend. It was fun to come on and do a show that was kind of all about love, even if we had to argue a little bit, because that's who Omar and I are behind the scenes. And then we have to come on and kind of be our characters and fight with each other. But y'all, the point is just love comics. As long as you love comics and you love the people that you talk about comics with, you're doing it right. So let's bring that or that energy into the new year. I'll be back to fight with Omar again for the solicits on Thursday. But let's roll out of 2024 with some love. And that is why I'm here. So thank you, Minties. Thank you, Omar. And I'll see you again in 2025.
Which is 2 days from now.
Only one if you're in New Zealand. It's New Year's Eve, baby.
Oh, well, then you have fun. Everybody have a wonderful and safe New Year's Eve too, please. We